Welcome to the first ever Blood, Sweat, and Beers Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm joined by my guest, owner of Ply Punch, Ryan Nelson. Ryan, how are you doing today?
Doing all right. Nate, how are you doing?
Pretty good. So we're going to start here. We're going to kind of glaze over week 3, do a little bit of a recap, look at the games, point out some key things. We're not going to spend too much time on the bit. We got to get going on some other stuff here, but we will start out with that. Why don't we just start out right away with our game, since we're both here. The Nympho Demons.
Okay.
Versus Ply Punch.
All right. Well, my team goes second week in a row underperforms. Calvin Johnson not really giving me what I was looking for here. It's week to week. I know I tinker with my lineup quite a bit. I catch quite a bit of flack for that, but You have
the most moves in the fantasy football league thus far.
Followed closely by you, so I'd like to point that out.
Followed closely by me, but my moves are more successful, as you can see,
That's true.
As is evidenced by week 3.
That has been true so far, but
long story short, I pick up the 74-63 win. I win by 11.
Yeah. All right, let's move to the NFL here. We'll kind of stay away from our fantasy league just a little bit, just because we want to make this a little bit more open to everybody else.
Sure.
But we'll just kind of go over the Vikings game just because it seems to be what everybody's interested in around here anyway. Vikings lose to the Saints 20-9. A couple of talking points that I have here. Just first one, right off the bat, Matt Khalil looks like crap.
Yeah, he for the second week in a row, he has looked not requisite of a number 4 overall pick from a couple of years ago.
I mean, it's one thing to waste the pick on a guy who goes bad his first year and then improves, but for him to come out and do so well his first year and then to completely flop the last 2 years. I know that the first 3 guys he's faced, Robert Quinn, and then he faced Jones guy out of New England, and then Junior Gillette. Those are 3 top 10 sack pass rushers last year.
I think they had over 50 sacks combined last year.
Yeah,
so 3 of them.
I'll give him the benefit of the doubt this week, but going into week 4 here against the Atlanta Falcons, it's going to be a huge thing for Matt Khalil to be able to get his feet back in the ground. You see that nasty left tackle that we saw his entire rookie year. Because once we see that, I think we're going to start to see a little bit more downfield passing. We're going to see a better run game overall. When that left side is anchored, you always see better play out of the entire offense.
Yep. I think looking at Matt's play, obviously he's a big man. He's got all the physical tools to dominate defensive linemen. Obviously you can't block him and beat him every play, but he's had between 7 and 10 bad plays a week for the first 3 weeks. And again, like you said, playing some high-end defensive end talent. But he is a number 4 overall pick, and for that pick you would expect a season like he had his rookie year. Yeah. And maybe that's the worst thing that happened for Matt Khalil is he absolutely dominated his rookie year, and now expectations are sky high. The bar is so high.
Right.
And the mistakes that he makes, for other people you may look at that and think it's kind of nitpicky to look at those, but for him being a number 4 overall pick and with the rookie year he had going to the Pro Bowl, dominating so many players, I think he's set himself up to have an expectation of play that he just simply hasn't reached the past 2 years.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that it's easy for a guy like Matt Khalil to come in with the expectations, especially when his brother's been as good as he is in Carolina,
right,
with that much longevity. It's hard to come in and be compared to him initially, outperform him for the most part for the first 2 years when Carolina really hasn't been that good. And then to see him take the major steps back that he did the last half of last year, and then into this year, where at first there was the injury concern last year, and then he really just didn't recover from that. This year he just looks like he's starting off slow. It makes me wonder if it's the expectations getting to him. And Mike Zimmer had a really great point that Matt Khalil, he needs to be able to forget those bad plays, like a quarterback or a cornerback,
right.
to forget the bad plays and move on to the next play and just be that nose to the grindstone player that offensive line needs to be.
And that was another point I was going to make is, being that he has all those physical tools, he's got the height and the size, he's got great lateral movement with his feet. It seems to me like it's almost more of a mental thing where it's like when you hit a bad shot in golf and then you go off, you 3-putt on the green, and then the next hole you shank the drive right off the bat. it's kind of reminiscent of that, where he'll have one bad play and then you kind of see him kind of have a sputtering of bad plays where he misses a block or he gets a penalty or whatever it may be. And I think he's got to just be able to take things in stride and play by play. Don't take everything so cataclysmically. When you make a mistake, you move on.
Absolutely.
And I think part of that is, again, the pressure of being a number 4 overall pick, knowing how he did in his rookie year. Obviously, he knows the expectations are high for him, and I think maybe sometimes that gets to him. But hopefully, as he progresses and matures, that'll kind of start to go away a little bit. He'll start to be more mentally tough. You got to have tough skin in this business to get the job done.
Especially when you've got a new quarterback coming in, and that leads me to my second point. Teddy Bridgewater coming in this week. It's going to be an interesting start to see how the Vikings do without Matt Castle at the helm. I think that Bridgewater gives them a little bit more offensive firepower. Adrian Peterson not being there, Kyle Rudolph not being there, Brandon Fusco's on the IR, he's out for the year. Vikings are looking a little banged up right now. I think the best thing that they can do is bring in Teddy Bridgewater, a guy who doesn't like to run, but he likes to stretch the play with his feet a little bit and keep his eyes downfield. I think that's going to open some opportunities for guys like Cordero Patterson, and I think that a guy like Greg Jennings can really benefit from that too.
Yep.
Don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that. It's kind of beaten to death. It's the main topic for the Vikings this week is how's Teddy time going to go.
Yep.
But it's just important to note that, with Khalil not playing real well, Fusco's out, you're missing really 40% of your starting offensive linemen there, either mentally or physically. And it's not going to be good if Teddy can't get away from the pressure.
Yeah.
Atlanta's not a great defense. It's a really good game to get his feet wet. They certainly shut down Tampa Bay last week, but they weren't.
But Tampa Bay is Tampa Bay.
Exactly. It's not a great,
and they were at home.
Yeah, it's not a great team.
Well, Atlanta is very susceptible to the run, and they're not a great pass defense either. I think Teddy will be able to hopefully read through his progressions. Hopefully the offensive line will give him some time to at least look around, set his feet, and if he has to, obviously you saw last week in the limited time he had against New Orleans, he is a quarterback who, although he's not a run-first type of guy, he is able to stretch the play with his feet. He's able to, if there's nobody open, find 5 yards of open area, and take the ball to.
We saw that toward the end of the game last week too, where when he started to drive against New Orleans, the defense really just kind of opened up to him. Because when you start to change the angles on which you're looking at a play, you're going to see more windows open up. You're going to see a wider window on one side of a wide receiver than you are when it's shaded by a defensive back when you're sitting in the pocket. So if he can roll out and he can get that outside look, he's going to be able to fire for a lot more plays on the run than a guy like Matt Castle could, extending that play with his feet again. And then what I really like about Bridgewater, and I know that I've explained this to you before and to some other people that we've talked to about this, that I like the fact that Bridgewater goes up into the pocket and then out of the pocket, and the last resort he has is to run, and then he slides when someone's coming up on him. He's got that extra sense. He doesn't like to run, but he's got a cannon for an arm and some slippery legs.
One of my favorite things about him coming out of college, when I was looking at film of him going back to February and March and into the draft in April, was you look at when the pocket collapses around Teddy, he's able to simultaneously keep his eyes downfield, looking off safeties, reading progressions, while also being aware with his peripheral vision around him of where the pocket's closing in on him, where he needs to stutter step and move with his feet to get out of the pressure area. And again, if he's very, very much capable of finding open areas to run. If there's nobody open downfield, the pocket's collapsing on him.
Yeah.
And I think that's a promising aspect for the Vikings, because you look at that in with Matt Castle, he was a veteran, he's a leader. He can make some throws. However, his mobility was very limited. He really couldn't get around very well when he was moving in the pocket or trying to move out of the pocket. And I think that added flexibility opens up more downfield passing from Norv Turner. I think you saw that already when Teddy was thrown into the game. Once they kind of warmed him up a little bit, He hit Jennings and Cordero Patterson both for passes of over 25 yards along the sidelines.
Yep.
Bullets dead on, completely accurate. And I think, I'm not saying I'm expecting him to go out and throw for 350 and 3 TDs against the Falcons on Sunday.
He could.
I'm not expecting it, but I'm not as worried as I have been hearing from some other national pundits and just talking to people about how they think he's going to do. I think he'll be just fine. I think hopefully he doesn't turn the ball over. Hopefully he doesn't get hurt, obviously. But I think he'll be just fine. I think we can expect somewhere in the realm of 200 yards and probably a touchdown or two.
Yeah. And if you look back at that film at Louisville, like you're saying, my favorite is when he was playing Florida in the Sugar Bowl. And you look at that just superior pass rush from Florida. And frankly, Florida's a program that really isn't great, but we'll get into college football a little bit later. But Florida's pass rush has consistently been one of the best in the nation for many years.
Sharif Floyd came out of there.
Absolutely. And you see guys that are these hyper-talented, hyper-fast defensive linemen and linebackers coming after a guy like Teddy Bridgewater. And the first thing he does, his first instinct isn't to panic and run. It's not to take the game into his own hands. It's to lean on his teammates.
Right.
I mean, you saw that in that quote that he had Wednesday in the Star Tribune, I think it was, that he said, it's a team game. I don't feel the pressure. And that's that's a very strong pointer to who the guy Teddy Bridgewater is.
Yep.
That he leans on his teammates, and that's why he has the confidence to step up, no sweat on his brow, step up into the pocket and just fire downfield, because he just trusts everybody to make a play.
And I think obviously he's very confident in his own abilities to throw the ball, to run the ball when necessary. I think he's just, even when you look at him on the field, you see his facial expressions on camera. He doesn't look nervous at all. He doesn't look like the moment's too big for him. He's not flustered. He just simply goes out there and plays football.
Right.
And the thing about it, when you watched him play at Louisville, it was the same thing. He wasn't flustered by the moment in the Sugar Bowl. He played it just like any other game. If you had just been looking at his face, you would never know it. It could have been a preseason game for all you knew.
Right.
And he was able to take. You saw the hit he took from the linebacker coming up on that blitz on that play when he rolled out to the right.
Yep.
And threw across his body for a completion, 20-yard completion to salvage the drive in that Sugar Bowl game against Florida. He took an absolute shot from that guy.
Yep.
And he got right back up, and he wasn't flustered at all. He kept stepping up in the pocket, kept making the tough throws, and I think he's just a kid he's very much a kid in the way that he
plays the game.
Right. He's very athletic, very I don't know how to say it. He's got that jump that some veterans don't have. You can tell he's a young kid, but when you look at his demeanor, he has the demeanor of a veteran, of somebody who's been in the league for years and who isn't afraid in the moment, isn't afraid to step up in the pocket, to run around, to make the throws he needs to make. And I think that's going to be his biggest asset moving forward, is his confidence in himself and his confidence in his teammates to make plays with him.
Definitely. I like Bridgewater this week. I think he's going to have a good starting debut. I think we're going to start to see that quarterback of the future here. On the defensive side of the ball, Captain Munnerlyn is absolutely on fire. That guy is playing out of his mind on defense. And I think that it's important to note that despite the fact that the Vikings gave up 34 against New England, it's mainly because of the turnovers on offense. This Vikings defense is so much improved from last year. And I'm not going to say that it's the best in the NFL by any standard, but it's so improved from last year. The fact that we can hold New Orleans Saints to 20 points and almost win that game if we can get in the end zone if that penalty's not called on Munnerlyn, which it shouldn't have been.
I think that penalty was a turning point in the game. You can argue back and forth about whether or not it's a penalty. It's kind of a discretionary call on the referees.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is, it was Drew Brees. He's a premier quarterback in the NFL, and the sensitivity to that kind of stuff hitting the quarterback is so high. Anything that even looks bad is going to get called these days. It is what it is. You can argue until you're blue in the face about whether or not it should be the penalty. We won't get into that.
Right. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and blame the refs for the loss. The fact that we didn't get into the end zone 3 times in the red zone is the fact that we lost.
Right.
But you can't sit there and honestly say that you think that the Vikings are going to win games kicking field goals. You cannot win games purely on the legs of Blair Walsh.
And that
you can't
moment,
do it.
That moment was absolutely a turning point. That moment, it's 3rd and long, and Captain Munnerlyn gets a sack. We're down 13-9.
Right.
If that penalty is not called, they don't go down and score that touchdown and make it 20-9.
I mean, if that penalty's called, they're back, on the 48-yard line. It's 4th and 15. They have to punt, and the Vikings, who had the momentum at that point, could move the ball. Teddy Bridgewater came in, and he was going to score.
Yeah.
I mean, he looked so much better, but after that penalty, you could tell that the Vikings just did not want to engage in the Saints players. They didn't feel comfortable hitting anymore. They didn't feel comfortable being aggressive, and that's something that Mike Zimmer's going to have to address, I think, in the coming weeks. Is with these penalties, with the changes in the NFL, can we afford to have such an aggressive defense and still play safe?
Yeah.
Can we still abide by the rules and stay within that realm of this is a good hit, this is a good clean defense, they're just really aggressive, versus the 2009 Saints, who were very aggressive and broke every rule in the book to do it. Moving on from the Vikings game, we're going to move into some fantasy football talk, just generally. 3 surprises this past week and 3 busts. We went over this earlier, and we kind of came to an agreement. I did change one on mine, but I'll let you go first on your surprises this week.
Well, Go ahead.
All right. Sorry about the brief pause there. We had we're sitting in the Caribou.
We had a barista-related clomp on our covenant.
Absolutely, but that's okay. We'll continue right on with our surprises. Nate was going to go ahead with those, and I'll follow up with that, and we'll get on to our busts. Go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and my 3 surprises. I'm gonna start off with Kelvin Benjamin out of Carolina. You look at a rookie drafted out of Florida State here, I believe he was in the 3rd or 4th round this year.
I'm not sure.
Actually, I think it was 5th round almost.
Let me take a look for you real quick.
Yeah, look that up. But drafted in the later round, Kelvin Benjamin out of Florida State. He's 6'5", 260 pounds. He's a huge wide receiver target, and he's got hands that I think people undervalued in the draft.
Oh, absolutely.
And he's gone from week 1 being a wide receiver 3 in Carolina.
He was a first-round pick, by the way.
He was a first-round pick?
First-round pick.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He was late first round. What I was thinking is he was later than his projected or whatever. He was projected to go top 10 or top 15 or whatever.
He's turned into a great red zone threat.
Absolutely, he's turned into a great threat all over the field. He's gone from a wide receiver 2-3 to now he's unquestionably Cam Newton's number 1 target on that Carolina offense.
Yeah, he is. The one thing I do worry about with him, though, he's a nice big target. He's a bulky receiver. He's 6'5". I think he's like 230 pounds. He's a big guy, and the thing that concerns me is he's not very quick. He's fast. He's got the downfield speed, but his agility lacks, and that's where he's gonna have to learn in route running. How to do the head fakes and the hip fakes and foot fakes and things like that receivers need to learn how to do to make themselves seem more agile than they are. Down the field, I think that we're going to see him catch a lot of balls deep, and I like that a lot about him.
And the thing I like about him, too, is even though he doesn't have great foot speed, he doesn't have that great separation ability in the short to intermediate routes, even when he's covered, he's still open. Because he can fight off defenders for balls with his he's got long arms, he's tall, he's bulky, and you can throw to him while he's being covered and he'll get that ball. He'll go get that ball. Well, he reminds me a lot of Randy Moss in that way. You could throw it up to Randy Moss in triple coverage and he would come down with it 9 times out of 10. It's just uncanny, that ability to go up and get the ball.
That's what gave Tom Brady his 50 touchdowns in 2007. But if you look at a guy like Benjamin, you see that catch against Pittsburgh last week where he just went up and he took it right out of the air. He didn't catch the ball, he grabbed the ball. Right. And there's a big difference there where he has such hand strength that he can just go up and do that. And I think we saw it the week before that too in that game. I don't remember who they played.
Well, you saw the one-handed catch in that game where he reached out with his left hand and he caught the ball by the tip of the ball, like he caught the tip of the ball in his hand and brought it down while he was being covered nonetheless.
Yeah, and it's tough for me to say that he's going to be a bona fide number 1 receiver his entire career, but
he's only 3 weeks into his rookie career. We don't have to go overboard here, but he has the potential. He's the leading candidate for Rookie of the Year right now in the NFC, as far as I'm concerned.
And it's not even close.
No.
It's not even close. The one guy I think that could end up challenging him would be Teddy Bridgewater, only because he's going to be the quarterback of a team that does have some offensive weapons and that are going to make him look a little bit better than he actually is at first. But we'll move on from that. Our top 3 busts. I'll go first on this one. I'm sorry, I have to give you my surprises here. We'll move on from Benjamin's, what I meant to say. Second one we had was Kirk Cousins.
Yep. I had Kirk Cousins as well on my top 3.
He stepped up.
I don't even know, and I use the term surprise loosely here because we did see him a little bit. We saw glimpses last year of him.
Yeah.
And the year before.
But it's more to say that he's a little bit. It's a surprise to see him so consistent.
Yeah.
And the thing that gets me is I think that Jay Gruden wanted so badly for RG3 to be the guy because he's so popular in Washington. But when it comes down to it in Jay Gruden's system, which is the same one that made Andy Dalton the huge quarterback in Cincinnati, it comes down to the system, and Kirk Cousins is a guy that I think is a much better fit for that system than RG3. RG3 is going to look to run first or second every single time. He's not going to want to run through those reads a lot. But what it comes down to is, can you throw the ball consistently? Can you stand in the pocket, and can you throw the ball consistently? And I think that Kirk Cousins is that guy. I think Kirk Cousins is going to show that to everyone this year, especially Jay Gruden. He's going to win that starting job, and he's going to be the quarterback of the future for the Washington Redskins, who I think will win the NFC East this year.
Yeah, I would have to agree on the prediction there. I think the NFC East is by far the weakest division in football.
The NFC North would like something to say with that.
They're both pretty weak, but I'll take the NFC East over it because I think Chicago is going to be a pretty good team this year. I like the way their offense is rolling under Trestman. I think the Vikings are going to be better than they have been the past couple of weeks. I think with Teddy Bridgewater, that'll obviously help. The Packers are going to come back to life at some point. They're abysmal right now, but
we'll get to that later with them.
The Packers are the Packers. They'll be all right eventually, I think. And then Detroit's defense is the number 1 defense in the league right now. They're giving up the fewest yards per game.
Yeah, and you know they're a great team. You know,
great defensive team.
Last year they were a great collection of players. Detroit
Yes.
was under Jim Schwartz. The last couple of years they have been. The one thing I can say about Jim Caldwell, and I grew up a Colts fan. I'm a Vikings fan now, but I grew up a Colts fan, and I watched those Colts teams in the early 2000s. And I can tell you without a doubt, the reason Peyton Manning is as good as he is in the NFL today, the amount of improvements that he made to his game. Now, he was great before, but the reason he's a great NFL quarterback is because of Jim Caldwell. Jim Caldwell knows how to coach a quarterback. And people can say that Norv Turner or Jim Harbaugh are the best quarterbacks coaches in the NFL. I would wager it's Jim Caldwell. And you can see that in the improvements that Matt Stafford has made this year. Now, I will say that the games against Carolina and Green Bay are a little bit different just because he's playing some hot secondaries. I think they're a little bit better than most teams give them credit.
Yeah.
But mark my words, Matt Stafford will be a top 3 quarterback this year. I think he's going to be an absolute monster, and I think Detroit's going to win the NFC North.
Well, I sure hope so because Matt Stafford is my starting quarterback on my fantasy football team. But we're becoming tangential here. Back to what we were talking about.
Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins. Yeah, I agree. Washington will win that division. And I think we're seeing, with the emergence of Kirk Cousins, I don't think he's going to give that spot up. RG3 is going to be out weeks now. I think even when RG3 is healthy, he's not going to come back. I think we're seeing in the rise of Kirk Cousins, we're seeing the demise of RG3 in Washington.
Only in Washington, though. I think he's a talented enough quarterback, and we're going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, but you mark my words, RG3 will be the starting quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys next year. Mark my words. They won't trade him. They're going to cut him, but he will be the starting quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys next year.
Hey, when you're wrong next year, I'm going to play this back.
You liar!
Okay. All right. Well, we can play that back next year, but I'll tell you what. I don't think I'm wrong on that. You look at Tony Romo and the back problems. He was talking about retiring before this year even started. They're going to need a quarterback. RG3 is going to get cut in Washington. Cut. I'm not saying traded. They won't trade him. He has no trade value. He will be cut. And Jerry Jones is going to see that. He's a Texas kid. He went to Baylor. The best thing that Jerry Jones could do would be trade for Adrian Peterson and sign RG3.
I was just going to say we're going to see the Adrian Peterson bit come into play here. He's going to get Adrian from Minnesota. He's going to go out and get RG3. All of a sudden, people are going to be raving about the Cowboys again and saying, "No, America's team."
They could run the
America's
read
team.
option and win every game. I'm just kidding. I don't think Adrian Peterson's half as good as people give him credit for anymore. He was great in his career, but I don't think he's half as good as people give him credit.
Well, I think you've started to see him kind of slow down after he had his year 2 years ago, his MVP year, where he finished 8 yards short of Eric Dickerson's single season rushing record.
That season alone will get him into the Hall of Fame. You just wait.
Yeah. Well, and that's a discussion to be had too with these allegations, but I think I agree in some ways, but also I look at the way that the Vikings offense has been in the past couple of years, and I give Adrian a little bit of credit. He's been struggling through the meat grinder of having some pretty poor offensive line play for Matt Khalil and some instability at the left guard position with Charlie Johnson.
Yeah.
That being said, he had his best season of his career in 2012 with all 5 of those same guys.
Yeah.
So, and obviously we're not going to know now. He's out for the rest of the year, at least for the foreseeable future.
Right.
I don't think he'll be back this year. He might be back next year. I don't know if it's with the Vikings or not.
I doubt it. There's no way he comes back with the Vikings. But
well, and there was that report out of CBS about the Vikings not seeing him in their future.
Yeah.
I don't know how
that reeks of PR to me. But
yeah, I don't know how that is.
I'll tell you what, though. We'll move on here. My third surprise, I know it's a little bit different than yours, but my third surprise, as I thought about it a little more, is actually Andrew Luck. The guy put up 40 points twice this year. I know in our league it's a little bit different. We have 6-point touchdowns for quarterbacks, but to put up 40
the way
points,
it should be.
To put up 40 points, Andrew Luck, I think he's emerging as an elite quarterback in the NFL right now.
I agree completely. I think
we're top 5.
I think at the end of the year he's going to be top 5 fantasy quarterback in points.
Absolutely, and we're watching. It's kind of funny. We're seeing the decline of guys like Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, even Aaron Rodgers. We'll get to that a little bit later, but Andy Dalton too, Tony Romo, Drew Brees. These guys who have been stalwarts of fantasy football for God knows how long, and all of a sudden you've got guys like Andrew Luck, Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins, Nick Foles, guys like that coming into the league, establishing that new top 5 and becoming great quarterbacks.
Yeah, and Teddy Bridgewater could easily become a part of that.
It'll take a couple of years.
It remains to be seen. I think Teddy's going to need some more weapons, but he's a guy who could also be thrust into that conversation of top 5 quarterbacks here with the regression of some of these older veteran quarterbacks who have been mainstays in the list of top 5 quarterbacks in the league.
Since 2004, Peyton Manning has the most touchdowns in the NFL, followed closely by Drew Brees and Tom Brady. Aaron Rodgers is a little bit newer to that. He didn't start until 2009.
Those guys are in their mid to late 30s. Aaron Rodgers is only 30 years old.
That's true, but at the same time, you
had nothing in 5 years.
You've had nothing but inconsistent play from the offensive line in Green Bay the last 2 years, and their defense. You can't get involved in shootouts like that, not being able to run the ball and trying to pass every down.
And it amazes me when you say you brought up the point about Green Bay's offensive line. I don't remember the last time Green Bay really had a good offensive line, and yet, I mean, Aaron Rodgers has had some injuries, but you would think almost every week he'd just be getting killed. And
that's true.
And Teddy Bridgewater reminds me a lot of Aaron Rodgers in this way. Aaron Rodgers is not a fast guy. He's not a speedster. He's not a running quarterback, but he's able to escape pressure. He's able to escape pressure and just kind of and use his feet to get away from it a little bit. And again, it's like you watch him. It's kind of mystifying. Like you watch him run, and it's like this guy looks like a fish out of water trying to run, but he's getting away from the pressure. He's just slippery enough to get away from it.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a big influence in the career of Aaron Rodgers, is how he's been able to avoid these absolute onslaughts that his offensive line have been throwing at him.
Right, but you see that with the Hall of Fame type quarterbacks. You see that with guys like Dan Marino and Steve Young and Joe Montana. All of them. I mean, Steve Young's a bit of an aberration. He was really fast for a quarterback, but I mean, you see guys like Joe Montana and even guys back to Roger Staubach. These bigger quarterbacks who can move not run, but they can move, and they're hard to bring down. They're hard to tackle. Guys like Ben Roethlisberger.
They seem to be able to just kind of, not to step on your touchdown call here, but they seem to be able to just, while they're not running around and like running for yards and making great plays with their feet, they're able to avoid getting hit.
Right, and that's what Bridgewater brings to the table, and so I'll agree with you that I think in a couple of years he'll be a top 5. Right now, remains to be seen. Moving on, your third surprise this
My
week.
third surprise, I think we both had this one, Des Bryant.
Yeah, he was mine before Andrew Luck, but I thought about it a little bit more.
I've been surprised with Des Bryant and for a couple of reasons. Number one, Tony Romo's his quarterback.
Right.
And no disrespect to Tony Romo, but the man hasn't been a consistent quarterback ever.
Right.
In his entire career, he's been completely peaks and valleys, up and down. Either he's got 4 interceptions or he's got 4 touchdowns. It seems like there's no in between with him. So for me, the consistency of Des Bryant has been a surprise, just given the fact of his quarterback, and also he's been in a contract kind of, I wouldn't say dispute, but there was some drama before the season started with his contract. Obviously, a free agent next year. Reports coming out that he didn't want to re-sign with the Cowboys.
And who can blame him?
He hasn't verified any of those claims that he's denied re-signing the contract. But the fact that those rumors are there shows that something is amiss there with the situation with his contract.
Right.
Will he be back next year? I don't know. But that fact alone, that there's that kind of been that up and down with his contract, makes me a little bit surprised that he's had the year he's had thus far. Obviously, only 3 weeks, but again, his consistency overall has surprised me.
Right, and it's tough with Dez. Even back to Oklahoma State where he played in college. The guy just wants to win, and I'm sorry to any Dallas friends that I might have out there. Any friends that I have that are Cowboys fans, but when it comes down to it, the Cowboys are not very good.
No.
They're inconsistent. They're 8-8 team year in and year out, and the reason is simple: Jerry Jones.
I was just going to say, the man is probably one of the best owners in the history of football, and without a doubt, the worst player talent evaluator to ever hold a general manager position in the NFL.
The guy needs to hire a general manager. And I'll tell you this, if I had my choice, if I were the Dallas Cowboys, I'm calling Jimmy Johnson. I'm calling Jimmy Johnson to be my GM tomorrow. and I think that Jerry Jones is a little too prideful to do that. I think things ended poorly with him and Jimmy Johnson. I think that Jason Garrett is a great coach. I really think he is. I think he's done some stuff with that team that nobody else would have been able to do. I think he should be a mainstay in Dallas, but I also think that they need a real GM. They need a guy who knows football a little bit better than Jerry Jones. And that's not to say Jerry Jones doesn't know football, but that's to say that Jerry Jones isn't a professional at that. He's tried and he's failed.
He's just not a great talent evaluator.
Right.
He's not a scout. He's never been a scout. He's an owner. He provides money for the team. He provides cash flow. He provides business for the team. He's a great owner in the sense that he's willing to spend money to make his team better, but he's just flat out, the man cannot evaluate a player. He cannot go to the draft combine and find a great third-round pick or a great second-round pick, even a great first-round pick. They've missed on a lot of them. Morris Claiborne being the most recent one. He's had a terrible year thus far.
He walked out on practice on Wednesday.
He walked.
He left the Cowboys facility, packed his bags, and left. And it's no surprise. I mean, Orlando Scandrick is no great corner. He's not. He'd make a better safety than a corner. He's a little bit older now. But it's hard to tell me that Jerry Jones can run that team like a guy like Jimmy Johnson could. Even if you were to give someone like Bill Polian a call, I bet he would come down and work with the Cowboys if you paid him enough. But
quite frankly, in my opinion, anybody who's been around a front office in a talent evaluator's position, a scout, a coach, a former GM, anybody would be better than Jerry Jones right now.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on, we got 3 busts. I'll kind of take the lead on this one since you took the first one last time. My first bust is going to be Randall Cobb, an know we agree on that. Getting 2.5 points next week. But
yeah, he had 2.9 points this week, and he is on my fantasy team.
It's bad.
It was really bad. He almost cost me the game.
Well, he did. He almost did cost you the game. It's tough to say that he would have costed you the game, considering Eddie Lacy only got 2.5 as well, going out with that. But I mean, yeah, PA has it right there. I mean, it's no. You can say nothing but no to that. I mean, the Packers were flat out bad last week. Well, again, we'll get to that later, but they just looked terrible. Looking almost as terrible, Matt Stafford, your fantasy quarterback. And
why? How come everybody for me had a terrible week this week?
I know.
All my big guys.
It's hard to say whether Matt Stafford is going to be the guy for that long or not, but I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't know. He's your fantasy quarterback, man. If you want to hold on to him, hold on to him. But
that's kind of a big reason I picked up Jay Cutler this week in a trade with waiver. This is Jay Cutler. Jay Cutler is definitely a mid-range QB1 who I can rely. If Matt Stafford's not performing, if he's got a tough week coming up where I think he's not going to put up the points I need him to, I can plug Jay Cutler in, and he's going to play against.
He's having a career year this year.
Jay Cutler is having. This is probably the best 3 weeks of his career to begin a season that he's ever had.
And I would like to point it out that early on, before the season, I think it was me that said Jay Cutler was going to be my number 2 behind Peyton Manning this year.
Did you say that?
I did say that in my rankings. I think it went Peyton Manning and then Jay Cutler. And I took a lot of crap for that.
Oh, you're a prognosticator.
Good for you.
Funny. I think that it's. I'm not going to sit here and toot my own horn, but obviously he's having a great year. If his receivers can stay healthy, he's going to have a better year. Brandon Marshall obviously having the ankle and foot problems right now, and Alshon Jeffrey with, I think it was an ankle or a knee.
And I think the emergence of Martellus Bennett at the tight end position has been huge for him.
I mean, if you want to call it an emergence, call it an emergence, but he's been good the last couple of years. He has a lot of really good games, but I think
you've seen I've just seen the consistency of the expanded role for Martellus Bennett with the injuries to Alshon and Brandon Marshall.
Absolutely. Next up, our next bust is the Carolina defense. Now, this screwed me just a little bit this week with -1 point. They're a fairly consistent team, and I think that it was the two-headed monster in Pittsburgh that got him a little bit with the Le'Veon Bell and LeGarrette Blount having huge games like that. As a defense, you can't allow running backs to run all over you like they did in the Pittsburgh game, and it's hard to see them having that problem consistently, especially with the schedule that they have. Atlanta's not a great running team. Tampa Bay is not a great running team. New Orleans isn't a great running team.
No.
Carolina's defense best part is their back end, and that's why you didn't see a whole lot of rushing touchdowns in the Pittsburgh game. You saw a lot of rushing yards, not a whole lot of rush touchdowns. And the reason is because that their back end is probably the best in the NFL. The only other team I think that could really compare to that would probably be New England's with Darrelle Revis, or maybe even Seattle's with the Legion of Boom. But even them, I think they've taken a step back this year. I don't think they're nearly as good as they were last year. And I think part of that comes down to motivation. I don't think they're really that motivated of a team this year in Seattle. But
I mean, obviously, there's the worry of a letdown after the Super Bowl win. I agree. I don't think they've been, just in watching. I've watched every one of their games so far. That the defense, especially, they don't look as hungry as they were last year.
Absolutely.
And I think that's because last year they had a chip on their shoulders. They felt like they had something to prove. Obviously, being led by Richard Sherman, who has always felt like he's been undervalued by people around the league. And I think the coming out party they had last year with winning the Super Bowl, being the number 1 overall defense, getting all the media attention, getting all the fans' attention, I think that chip on their shoulder is kind of gone now, and they don't. There's not that urgency to prove themselves.
Right. And the thing that really drove Seattle last year, I think, was the fact that they were able to run the ball so effectively. And this year, you haven't seen it. I talked about it before, and I'll say it again, that I don't think Marshawn Lynch is half as good as people think he is. I think they had great offensive line play last year. I think he is a good running back, but he's not a great running back. He's a serviceable power back who's hard to tackle. The beast mode thing is a fun cliche. It's a fun little niche to put on somebody, but when worse comes to worse, I would much rather have a LaShawn McCoy, even someone like an Adrian Peterson in his prime, over someone like Marshawn Lynch, who I think he's week in and week out. He puts up numbers, he puts up touchdowns, but who puts them there? Who puts them in that situation? Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL because he doesn't throw picks. He plays smart.
Yeah, he doesn't turn the ball over. He almost never turns the ball over. He had an interception last week, and I forget the exact stat, but that was his first interception in like 8 or 9 games or something going back to last season. That's unheard of.
You don't see him turn the ball over, and that's a consistent trait with most of the great quarterbacks in the NFL and in NFL history. Peyton Manning doesn't throw the ball into the defense's hands much. Tom Brady doesn't. Aaron Rodgers doesn't. Guys like Joe Montana didn't. Brett Favre did, but he made so many other plays that he was able to make up for it. That they had such a good defense in Green Bay back in those days, they didn't have to worry about the turnovers. But moving on, we'll kind of move to our waiver wire picks.
Let's move it. Let's go ahead. We're going to move into our top 5 waiver wire pickups for the week. Ryan, I'm going to let you start off.
All right. I've got Brandon Taliaferro here from Baltimore. He put up a monster game last week, and they got 106 and 1 touchdown. If they're going to be moving away from Bernard Pierce in Baltimore, I'm kind of biting off the cake that Fantasy Victory put out this week after reading their bits about Taliaferro, but I agree with them. I think that he's going to have a lot of touches in Baltimore. I think he'll have a chance to score quite a bit in Baltimore, because obviously Ray Rice is out, but I like him a lot. I think that he was your number 1 as well. Otherwise,
yeah, I had it was Lorenzo Taliaferro, by the way, not Brandon.
Oh, that's my bad. I wrote it down.
It was Lorenzo Taliaferro. But yeah, I agree. I think you look at the week he had last week. You watch the highlights of that, and he's exactly the type of runner Baltimore needs. He's a downhill north and south runner. He's patient to the point where he can stutter step, wait for the hole to open a little bit, and then he hits the hole. He doesn't mess around. He doesn't go around the tackles. He doesn't try to juke and drive everybody. He just hits the hole hard and he runs.
Yeah.
And I think you look at I'm forgetting his name. Bernard Pierce.
Yeah.
Bernard Pierce. He's more of a dip and dive kind of runner. You see, he's got more speed than I think than Taliaferro. But Taliaferro is, I think, going forward, he's going to be the number 1 back in Baltimore. He's produced. You can. Just based on pure production, I think you got to go forward with him until he no longer produces.
And frankly, he reminds me a lot of Adrian Peterson in his running style. It's an aggressive style. He doesn't come out of the backfield much to catch passes, and he runs between the tackles. And that's the kind of guy that you need to have in the AFC North, because the defenses that once were in the AFC North, really the only one that I would worry about would be Cincinnati. They'd be really the only ones that would be able to stop the run consistently. From a guy who has power and speed in that combination.
Yep.
Cleveland, they've taken a step back. Their linebackers aren't nearly as good this year. Obviously, Baltimore has the guy, and then Pittsburgh. I don't know what's going on with Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh is bringing in 36-year-old James. They're dusting off James Harrison.
Are they really? Did they sign him?
They signed James. They're dusting off James Harrison at the linebacker position. That tells you how their defense is.
That's ridiculous. They cut him 2 years ago.
Yeah.
They cut him. He didn't walk away. They cut him. Wow, I didn't know that. That's ridiculous.
So that tells you the state of affairs for the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. If you were listening to this
and you have the Steelers defense on your fantasy team, I hope you get hit in the head with a tack hammer, because you don't watch the game, you don't listen to the game. Please
you don't see the
stop
game
playing fantasy football. No, actually, I want you in my league. Please come to my league. I want to win every year. So I want you personally, if you are the one carrying the Steelers defense this week in the last 2 weeks, I want you on my league. I want you here. Moving on, my next waiver wire pickup is Bishop Sankey. A lot of people are going to disagree with me on that because of Wissenhunt's comments about him not being quick enough, not having good enough footwork. But I like Bishop Sankey. I like him a lot.
Yeah, I mean he's been kind of an up and down guy in Tennessee. I don't like that offense a whole lot. I'm not gonna pound on your take here and beat you down.
Hey, it's fine.
But
do what you need to do, man. This is a group effort. This is a team. It's all about the team here, man. And
overall, I'll just say I don't like the Tennessee offense. I don't like the offensive line. I think their defense is on the field way too much. The offense is not getting enough opportunities. They're going to be behind in a lot of games. I don't see them running the ball a whole lot. That being said, again, you've seen when Bishop Sankey is at his best, he's able to almost single-handedly take over games against certain teams.
Right.
I mean, I would pick him up as if you need some running back help. If you got a guy in a bye week and he's got a favorable matchup, then I would go ahead and take a chance and pick him up. I don't think he's nowhere near an every week starter. He's not an RB1. He's not an RB2. He might be a flex play.
He's a mid-level RB2. He's got the touchdown ability. He can score anytime. He's not super fast, but he's a good enough guy that he'd be able to play consistently. He's only going to get 20 to 30 touches a game. He's not going to be a huge play in Tennessee, but he's worth a roster spot in deeper leagues. I'm not going to say drop him if you have him, basically, is what I'm saying with him. He's worth a pickup. He might get some extra carries on later on in the year.
Right. But I would say don't pick if you're in a league where you've got a cap for your waiver pickups.
Yeah, stay away from Sankey if you're in that situation.
Yeah, I mean he's a pickup if you need help at the running back position, if you have injuries, if you have multiple bye weeks, whatever the situation may be. If you absolutely need running back help and you're in a deeper league, then yes, he's a guy that you can go out and take a chance on, and he might pop a couple touchdowns.
Yeah, 3-4 running back leagues, you can viably take a guy like Bishop Sankey off the waiver wire.
And I think he could be, depending on the matchup, he could be a strong flex play as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Who's your next guy up?
My next guy up is tight end from Baltimore, Owen Daniels.
It's on my list too.
You see Dennis Pitta going down this week. He's going to be out for an extended period of time.
He's out for the season.
Yeah, he's going to be out for this. Was he placed on IR? I think he was. I think Baltimore placed him on IR.
He was, yeah.
Obviously, so he's going to be out for the season. Owen Daniels is the next guy up. There's been some talk about tight end by committee, but I think you look at the games just in the first few weeks, and it's not close. Owen Daniels is going to be the starter. He's going to be the guy. Even when Dennis Pitta was in, Joe Flacco was targeting Owen Daniels in the red zone more frequently than they were with Dennis Pitta.
Yeah, and it's hard to say whether or not Owen Daniels is going to be a success. He has injury concerns. He's been hurt before in his career for significant periods of time. He has concussion problems. And
he's an older guy, and tight ends are all tight ends are injury susceptible.
It's a physical position. The thing with Dennis Pitta is I think it's done. This is his career. He's done. He's not coming back. He's not going to play another down of football in the NFL. He'd make a great coach for tight ends. But
I think you'll see at the end of the year. We'll see what he does. Maybe he'll retire, but if he doesn't, I think you might be able to see another team give him a chance if they need help at tight end, backup tight end.
Yeah.
But I also wouldn't be surprised to see him be done.
He'd make a good role player like a Jacob Tamme in Denver.
Right.
A good pass catcher in the red zone, something like that. I mean, could you imagine if Denver signed, just hypothetically, if they signed Dennis Pitta after this season, just hypothetically, you would have Julius Thomas, Dennis Pitta, Emmanuel Sanders, Demaryius Thomas, and Wes Welker on the same squad.
Yep. That's the deepest.
And now we wait.
This is the problem of doing a podcast in a coffee shop.
It is the problem of doing a podcast in a coffee shop, but it's okay. I mean, it's a nice vibe we got here.
Rob's been nice to us. Rob's been good to us. Thanks, Rob.
At the Boo here, we got a good vibe. So we call it the Boo.
Yeah.
But the thing with the tight ends in Baltimore is there always seems to be some kind of concern with the injuries there specifically. You had Todd Heap, who was always hurt.
Yes.
You had Dennis Pitta, Dallas Clark was there. And every single tight end they have, Owen Daniels now, every single tight end they have seems to get hurt.
Baltimore has been to tight ends what Minnesota has been to quarterbacks.
Absolutely.
It's been a carousel.
Absolutely. After Owen Daniels, I've got, again, tight ends in Minnesota this time, just because Kyle Rudolph out for 7 to 8 weeks with that the groin injury. That
Sports hernia surgery.
That is not a fun surgery. I've got a combination of Rhett Ellison and Marquise Gray. If you've got 2 tight end spots on your team, pick these guys up. Marquise Gray is going to be the primary pass catcher, but don't rule Rhett Ellison out. The Vikings have a huge system that allows for tight end production no matter who's playing there, so we could see significant production out of either of those guys.
Yeah. We'll try and speed this up a little bit here, but I'm going to move on. My next one is Jordan Matthews. He's a wide receiver. He plays for the Eagles. I think you look at the way the Eagles have begun to open up their offense even more to passing. I think we're looking at Nick Folk getting his legs under him. I think with LaShawn McCoy having some early injury concerns, I think they're going to want to lighten the load on him a little bit. And I think you look at Jordan Matthews as a strong wide receiver 2 in Philadelphia. He's a guy, along with Macklin, who might not have the great consistency that you want, but they have the ability every week to explode for multiple points.
Yeah, I like
double-digit points.
I like Matthews a lot. The one concern I have is that he could split touches with a guy like Riley Cooper. But that's not necessarily a bad thing in a system that spreads the ball around as much as Philadelphia does.
Well, and when you got an offense like Philadelphia, where last year I think they threw the ball 40 to 50 times a week.
That's ridiculous.
It's a Chip Kelly offense. It's what they do.
I'm a Big Ten guy. I'm used to.
Don't go sour on the bid here, okay? Philadelphia's 3-0. They don't need your help.
I'm not saying they need my help. It's not my style of play. I like watching big guys hit other big guys. Just huge hits. Big Ten style football. The good Midwestern, old Iowa type teams.
Ryan, buddy, we're not in the cornfields in Iowa here, okay? We're not Huskers. We're not feeding ourselves with raw pig meat. Okay, we're in a new era here. Welcome to the 21st century. This is football in the present day.
I guess I'm just
it's a pass happy league.
I know, and I guess I'm a traditionalist, but I'm not going to deny that. I'm not going to back down from that.
You need to move on, okay? Because it's becoming a thing where your takes are being affected by it.
Okay, well that's fair. Moving on, my last waiver wire pickup this week.
I think we're going to have a little bit of a... Yep, there's the blender.
It's not quite as loud as we thought.
There's the blender shot.
That's all right.
We'll talk over it.
Yeah, my last waiver wire pickup this week is going to be LeGarrette Blount. Available in about 45% of leagues. He's a great handcuff for Le'Veon Bell. If you've got Le'Veon Bell, I think that...
and rich.
If you've got Le'Veon Bell, pick up LeGarrette Blount. He's going to be a fantastic handcuff. We saw it against a great defense at Carolina last week. I really think that you need LeGarrette Blount to complement him.
Ryan, I just have one thing to say about that.
Yeah, if it comes up for you.
Great story.
It's
great story.
It's just hard. It's hard to move away from a guy like Garrett Blount. He had a great game last week. 2 rushes over 100 yards.
And you look at with Pittsburgh, they've been throwing in LeGarrette Blount towards the end of the games when they have a lead and when they need more of a power presence when they really want to pound the ball. 110 yards rushing last week, and I think a touchdown as well.
Yeah.
17-point week for LeGarrette Blount. Both him and Le'Veon Bell. Great weeks last week. I would expect LeGarrette Blount's productivity to not be in the 17-point range every week.
Right.
But I think you'll see him getting opportunities, especially in the red zone when they're trying to run the ball, because he's obviously more of a power back than Le'Veon Bell.
Right.
And when they're down there in the 5 to less yard range in the red zone, I think you'll see him be used a lot more.
Right. And you have one more?
Yeah, I got 2 more.
Okay.
How many do you have left? You just have one?
I had one. We went over Daniels at the same time. I had him.
Oh, that's right, we did. Okay, so sorry, I didn't mean to claw up on your styling.
Fine, take your time. We're not in a hurry. Game doesn't start for 45 minutes. Come on.
Perfect. Moving on. I got John Brown. He's also a wide receiver. He's from Arizona. I like the way he's not Percy Harvin fast, but he's that slot guy, that wide receiver 3 kind of option in that offense.
Yeah.
but you look at the way the Arizona offense has been trending. Larry Fitzgerald is being absolutely phased out of that offense.
Yeah.
He's lost a step. He's not as fast as he once was. He doesn't have the breaking ability, and he's been getting missed on wide open passes for whatever.
Should we break out the Wolf Jet on that again?
Oh
go
my
Brett Favre in
gosh.
a bit. Just go pick up
No.
number 11.
No, the funny that story came out a few weeks ago about how his dad on Twitter had complained about how he was being used. He's not been getting the ball. He's not been getting open. He's older now. He's 31 years old.
We would have the all 2017 with Greg Jennings and.
Yeah, that'd be good. We could have the most Pro Bowlers from 2007 on the one team.
Hey, we've done it before and it's worked.
Has it?
No, it really hasn't.
No, it hasn't.
That's a bit for another day. Who's your last one?
I got D'Angelo Williams. I picked him up this week. I got Marshawn Lynch on a bye, so I picked him up. D'Angelo Williams is coming back from an injury. This will be his first full week of work as a starting back. Tolbert is out with an injury, and the other, I forget his name, but both their running backs, while D'Angelo was out, are now out with their own injuries. He's gonna be the feature back this week and moving forward. So I like based on just volume alone, I like his potential for points.
Sure. That's a good take. I like it. 3 drops. We'll fly through this one. Just name the guys. Don't need to really break it down a whole lot. Tom Brady. I think we agreed on that. He's just not producing a whole lot.
Yeah, that's self-explanatory. He's been having
just a down year.
And again, he's getting older. He lost Logan Mankins in the offseason. He hasn't been getting the same protection that he usually does. So I think you look at that, given the way he's trending, given some of the matchups going on into the season for him, I think he's a guy you look at dropping, or at least trying to trade away to someone who's willing to buy him low and see if you can get just a backup wide receiver or running back. Otherwise, I think he's a guy that you go ahead and drop. I got another one. I'm dropping T.Y. Hilton. He hasn't been horrible, but you haven't seen the production from him that you'd like to see.
Right.
And he's been not getting the targets that he was expected to get. Dwayne Allen, the tight end, has actually been getting more targets than T.Y. Hilton.
Right. And I mean it's a great point. I think that T.Y. Hilton is a guy who's going to be on the decline for the most part. I didn't like him from the start of the season. I know I picked him up this week just to see if he would do anything against Jacksonville, but it's Jacksonville.
Yeah.
You can't expect solid production out of a guy like T.Y. Hilton. He's injury prone. He drops the ball. Doesn't have great eyes. It's a mess for him.
And again, this is a player who in our league, just an 18 league for us, so I don't feel the need to keep him on my roster and stash him away. He could pick it up again later on in the season. Who knows? But for us, I don't feel the need to keep him on the roster and waste a roster spot on a guy who's not going to perform up to the level of a guy who I would never start anyway.
Yeah, no kidding.
For me, he's a drop. If you're in a team, a 12 or 14 team league, and you're not as deep in the waiver wire at wide receiver, he might be a guy you want to stash away. Also, if you're in a 3 wide receiver league, or a 3 wide receiver with a flex or anything like that, he might be a guy you want to stash away. But for us, for my purposes, I'm dropping him right now.
Yeah, I'm going to knock the last guy off my list here. I'm not going to bring him up, but I've got RG3. He's still owned in 75% of leagues and across the board. I mean, he's not coming back. I'm sorry, folks, but he's not coming back.
And I think even if he does come back this year, even if he's able to get over the ankle dislocation, I think Kirk Cousins is now the man in Washington. I think he's going to perform better than RG3 ever did in Washington because he's in a system that fits his style of play better than it fits RG3's.
Yeah.
And I think, like we said earlier in the show, I think he's being phased out by Kirk Cousins, and I think Cousins' emergence will push RG3 out at the end of the season. So I agree with that take. And then my last drop is Bernard Pierce from Baltimore. We already went over. Justin Forsett's already getting more carries than him. He's injured now. He's had some injury issues. Yeah. He'll play, but with Lorenzo Taliaferro starting to look like the number 1 back in Baltimore, I think he's a guy that you look at dropping right now.
Right.
You can always pick him up, or you can, at the very least, if you're going to have him on your bench, you got to handcuff him to Taliaferro.
Yeah.
Because I think he's just not going to get the carries that he was.
Right. My last guy, I know I said I'd knock him out, but I'll just throw two here real short. Jerick McKinnon, he's not going to get the reps you think he is in Minnesota. It's just not going to happen. Asiata's the guy. And my last guy...
The problem with McKinnon is he's not going to get reps because he's not a reliable... He can't pick up the blitz right now. He's way away from where he needs to be. He's just... I mean, he's young. He's a rookie.
Yeah.
He's going to need time to develop. I think in the future he'll be a guy in coming years who, if they can find ways to use him in a Darren Sproles type of way, like when Norv had Darren Sproles in San Diego, he could be a valuable flex guy. But I think for this entire year, basically, he's going to be someone that you just you don't need on your roster.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I think my last guy, you got to consider benching Aaron Rodgers for the time being. He's not producing. He's not throwing touchdowns. He's really not doing much of anything. The Packers look terrible, and that'll kind of roll into our next bit, 5 topics here. We're going to skip the first one, move right to the second one, and go back to the first one here.
Yep.
What's wrong with Green Bay? I mean, their offensive line looks terrible. Their defense looks even worse. Aaron Rodgers just hasn't been himself. The receivers that usually bail him out aren't doing well. What's going on?
Well, I think there's a number of things going wrong. We'll start on the offensive side of the ball. For me, right off the bat, you look at the offensive line. It's been a problem for years. It's a problem again. Brian Bulaga going down with the injury in the Seattle game. He tears up the one knee the first year. The next year he tears up the other knee.
Yeah.
He didn't tear it up this year, but he had an MCL sprain. Probably not going to play this week. Might play next week.
I would doubt it.
But I mean, I think he's been listed as questionable. But you look at the way that offensive line has performed throughout the career of Aaron Rodgers, and he's had that offensive line in Green Bay hasn't been good since Brett Favre was there.
Right.
And that's where their problems start. Is right there at the offensive line. They're getting blown up the middle with their rookie center. The rookie center's been taking some knocks.
Yep.
He's been getting pushed off the ball relatively easy, or getting pushed off the line relatively easy by these defensive linemen. And granted, they've played some good defensive lines in the New York Jets and Seattle Seahawks, as well as Detroit, the number one defense in the league right now. That being said, if that offensive line doesn't improve, I don't think Green Bay makes the playoffs this year, even with the ability of Aaron Rodgers to escape pass rush. I just don't. If you can't run the ball and you can't protect the pass, your offense isn't going to go anywhere.
Right. The thing that sticks out for me is, again, with the offensive line, you look at the lines that they've played, but you start to worry about, middle of the road defensive lines, how they're going to do against Green Bay. Minnesota next week is a huge example. How are they going to be able to stop a guy like Sharif Floyd, Everson Griffin? I mean, I know Chad Greenway's out for now. I bet you he's back next week. You're not going to sit Chad for 2 weeks. He's not going to allow it. He's the defensive captain.
Yeah.
Gerald Hodges coming in. You've got a rookie nose tackle against Sharif Floyd and Linval Joseph. You're not going to be able to run the ball. I don't care if you have...
Not between the tackles, at least.
Right. If you have even a guy like Adrian back there, you're not going to be able to run the ball.
Yeah.
You don't have the power up front that you need to push a big guy like that around. And then to have guys behind him like Harrison Smith, Captain Munnerlyn, Xavier Rhodes, who have time and again shown they can shut down Packers receivers. You throw Captain Munnerlyn in the slot, he's really the only guy in my mind that could shut down Jordy Nelson. He's bigger and he's stronger.
I think the Vikings matching up with the Packers. I think you take Munnerlyn on the nickel and you put him on either Cobb or Nelson, whoever's there, and then you shade a single high safety, either Harrison Smith or what's the guy's name?
It varies so much from week to week. Who's the guy who's starting this week?
I'm brain farting right now.
Blanton.
Yeah, Blanton. I think you look at that scheme, and you got to put. I think you put Munnerlyn on Jordy Nelson in the slot in the nickel position, and you shade a single high safety, and you don't let him go deep, and you suffocate him below.
Right.
And how much do the Packers miss their tight end right now, Jermichael Finley?
Absolutely.
Jermichael Finley was a huge target for Aaron Rodgers to throw to. He was an option when when that offensive line broke down like they did so frequently last year, Jermichael Finley was Aaron Rodgers' go-to check-down guy.
Right.
And he got open so often because he's such a superiorly skilled tight end in a route, in terms of being a route runner.
Right.
He can break free and get open so easily. How many times did you see it last year where Green Bay was bailed out by that tight end position when their offensive line broke down and the pass rush got through to Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, absolutely. What it comes down to for me is you look at Aaron Rodgers and he has lost so many targets in the last 3 years alone. I think Greg Jennings is gone. I know he's not the guy he used to be, but he's a good possession receiver. You have you lose a guy like Jermichael Finley, and now they have something called Andrew Quarles, who's not nearly as good. Jarrett Boykin goes down with injury this year. He's out for a couple of weeks. You've got a rookie starting in the slot. You've got Randall Cobb over there, and you've got Jordy Nelson. You cover Cobb and Nelson, and you've got a good defensive line. You eliminate three of their biggest threats in Eddie Lacy, Cobb, and Nelson. You can't run an offense that way. You've got to be able to spread the ball out, and you've got to have an offensive line to protect the quarterback, because he's not going to be able to throw over the middle to guys like Jordy Nelson, even if he is open. He doesn't have the time.
No, he hasn't been afforded the opportunity to throw down the field because he can't stand in the pocket for more than 3 seconds before he's got a defensive lineman on him.
Exactly.
And the scariest thing for the Packers right now is that teams they're not getting to Aaron Rodgers with all-out blitzes.
Right.
They're getting to him with 4 and 5-man rushes.
Yep. And you saw that with Detroit last week.
Yeah.
And it's my firm belief that last week was the power shift in the NFC North from the Packers to the Lions. I think the Lions are going to win the NFC North this year. And
the roar has been restored, as Calvin would say.
I don't think it's going to be close. I think that Chicago's going to be in second with a 9-7 record, and I don't think it's going to be close. I mean, I thought at the beginning of the year that the NFC North was going to be much better than it has been, but Detroit has looked far and away like the best team. I think in the top 3 in the NFC right now, I would go Philadelphia, Carolina, Detroit. I think. And the only reason I put Carolina over Detroit is because they were able to win that game against Detroit. And I picked Carolina to win the Super Bowl this year. I think that that's still going to stand. Their defense is just too good.
Did you say you picked Carolina to win the Panthers to win the Super Bowl this year?
I did pick Carolina to win the Super Bowl this year. It's hard to deny it. Their defenses look good. Their offense looks really good. Kelvin Benjamin's great over the middle. Greg Olsen is great in the flat. Their offensive line is solid.
Honey, they had -1 fantasy points last week against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
The Steelers were able to run the ball down their throat. Name one team in the NFC who can do that consistently.
Well, we'll find out. We'll find out this week.
Name one team in the NFC who can do that consistently.
But it's been 3 weeks. We haven't seen.
That's it. And you can put 8 men in the box against Seattle, and they will not be able to do anything. They are not a power team. They were a power team, but Marshawn Lynch has taken a step back this year. Fox, don't tell me that Carolina can't win the Super Bowl. They are talented enough to win the Super Bowl.
Honey, Carolina won't win the NFC Championship game, let alone the Super Bowl.
Who are they going to play in the NFC Championship game if they're going to lose to? San Francisco?
Seattle's
not going to make it to the championship game.
If they do, they'll beat them. If San Francisco makes it, they'll beat them.
Good enough. I'm sorry. It's not. You cannot repeat in the NFL. The only teams that do it are the teams that sign everybody back because they're willing to take pay cuts. There's too much ego in Seattle to win another championship.
Seattle does have everyone back from last year. Virtually everybody.
I don't think they do. Percy Harvin is too much in the mix. He's not a good enough guy to win a Super Bowl. You have a guy like Percy Harvin who's not going to be returning kicks like he used to. You think Pete Carroll wants him back running kicks the way he gets hurt?
He's been returning kicks for the first 3 weeks.
Okay, and
granted, they lost to San Diego. To me, that's an aberration.
They lost huge in San Diego. They looked awful in San Diego.
And
awful.
Again,
if they lose home field advantage, did you know that they are like 9-8 on the road in the last 2 years? 9-8.
They're also 10-0 in their last 10 home games.
They're 10-0 at home.
In their last 10 home games, they don't lose at home. Guess what? You get to play 8 games at home. All you got to do is win a couple on the road.
It's only 8 games, and
they play. Okay, so
one game that they've played on the road so far, they've lost.
Let's break this down.
That's exactly what we're doing.
Let's break it down. What were they last year? 4-4 on the road. I think they finished 500. I think they were 12-4. They won all 8 home games. They were 4-4 on the road. They're going to win all 8 home games again this year. They don't lose at home. If you go 500 on the road, you still finish 12-4. That's a bye week, my friend.
Maybe.
That's a fast track to the championship game.
Carolina could go 13-3. You could see Detroit go 13-3.
Carolina got destroyed this week. Carolina will make the playoffs.
Carolina's going to win the NFC South.
They'll win the NFC South. They will not.
They're going to be the
win
number
Super
3
Bowl.
seed in the NFC this year. The number 3.
Well, they were number 2 last year, so they took a fall.
They were number 2 last year?
They were 2 last year.
Maybe I missed something. Anyway, moving on.
No.
But I
Box.
we're gonna move away from the NFC North here a little bit.
We're becoming tangential.
We are. First one, Tony Stewart. What's next for him? Do you think he's going to race again?
Well, he's been racing. He's been racing the last couple of weeks, so I think, yeah. And to long story short, I think yes. Obviously, the ruling coming down today that he will not be indicted for criminally negligent homicide in the death of Kevin Ward Jr. That took place about a month ago. Grand jury has cleared him. He will not be charged. And yeah, like the question of will he race? I think yeah, he will. I think he missed 4 weeks or 3 weeks afterwards, and came back, and I think he's been in 2 races now. So yeah, I think he'll race. I think he'll continue to race.
Will he win?
I don't think so. I think this is the type of. I think this is like Brett Favre a la 2009 NFC Championship game. Box.
Yeah.
I think this is something where you're looking at, and it's such a, and you can't even go there, but it's such a mental. Can you imagine living with the guilt of having directly been involved in the death of somebody?
I mean, I'm not going to blame him for what he did. I mean, obviously the autopsy came back with the results that the kid was so high it was hard for him to function. I mean,
I think the DA said the level of marijuana in his system, in Kevin Ward Jr.'s system, was quote enough to impair judgment. So what that means, I don't know that I don't know that the fact that he got high made him run out on the track and step in front of a moving vehicle.
Yeah.
But I don't. Again, I'm with you. I don't blame Tony Stewart for this. I think he was trying to scare the kid by not changing his course. But what's he gonna do? The guy gets out of his car, runs down 2/3 of the track where hot moving vehicles are going 70 miles an hour.
The sprint cars are notoriously hard to turn. You can't turn,
especially on a dirt track.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The kid killed himself. I'm not going to sit here and blame the family, but the kid killed himself, and you can't even deny it. I mean, that's the worst part about this is this kid killed himself running out onto that track, and he should have known it. The number one rule in racing is that if you're in a wreck, you don't get out.
Yeah, and they tell you that every week in your driver safety meetings before the race starts. So, I mean, the kid is. It's so unfortunate it happened. Only 20 years old, and life cut short. But I'm not gonna go and say, badmouth the kid for being high and jumping on the track. Obviously, he made a very, very poor mistake in judgment, and he paid for it with his life, and it's tragic. But I think the right decision was made. I don't think Tony Stewart committed any crimes, or he should be facing jail time, which criminally negligent homicide, which he was facing, is a prison sentence of 10 to 25 years. I don't think Tony Stewart deserves to go to prison. I think he's probably paid enough for his role in it already, with the just having to know that he ended the life of a 20-year-old kid.
Right.
Anyway, moving on.
We've got Derek Jeter retiring. Obviously, it's the farewell parade for him. Everybody lining up to kiss his rings. Yeah,
tonight was the last Derek Jeter home game. I think the weather was rain, so I don't know if that game got rained out or not. We've been on the bit for a while now, so I'm not sure how that game has been going.
You think the Yankees can find the next Capitan?
They always seem to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to say no. You don't know where he's going to come from, but it's hard to say no just because you look at the past and the guys they've come up with, starting with Babe Ruth to Mickey Mantle, Lou Gehrig, Joe Rizzuto, Joe DiMaggio, all these guys that they just...
If there is one guy, and let's say he's on the Yankees roster right now, who do you think he is?
I'm not gonna say one guy. I think it's either Brett Gardner or Jacoby Ellsbury. I think those two are.
I'm gonna take a step. I'm gonna say it's Jacoby Ellsbury. I think he's a good enough hitter.
Absolutely. He's definitely a good enough hitter.
He can take that 3-spot clean, and he'd be able to do just about anything.
The good thing with him, I think, is he's young enough to be a leader for years to come.
Yeah.
But also, he's been in the league long enough. He's enough of a veteran presence to sort of guide younger players that they will have coming in. I think you're looking at the Yankees right now. They're going to be a couple years before they get really back into the AL East power rankings or whatever you want to say, before they're really contenders in the AL East again.
Yeah.
I really like the way Baltimore, the Orioles, are set up in the AL East. I think they've got it for a couple years. But I agree. I think Jacoby Ellsbury is a guy you look to going forward. I think Brett Gardner is also a guy that they'll be able to lean on. I think Ellsbury will be more of the offensive production, the player, so to speak, on the field. I think Brett Gardner gives you that kind of Derek Jeter-esque quality of just having the heart.
Yeah,
and being the heart and soul of the team.
Yeah. And it's hard to say, obviously, because we don't know. It's impossible to say. But since he was in Boston, I love Jacoby Ellsbury. He's a guy who knows how to play the game.
Let's just to be a little bit more morose about the Twins here. He was a guy who, if you recall, a few years ago when we were trading away Johan Santana, when he was not going to re-sign his contract, we were in talks with the Yankees to acquire Phil Hughes, who actually signed with us in the offseason this year, along with Jacoby Ellsbury and other prospects, and we turned it down for Carlos Gomez. Yeah.
Carlos Gomez. He's killing it in Milwaukee right now, though.
Well, but he was crap for 3 years here before we got rid of him.
Everybody's crap for 3 years.
We could have had it. We could have had Ellsbury. We could have had a guy who hits 300 and steals 40 bases a year.
David Ortiz. What's the other guy? Johan Santana, another one who had a resurgence after he left.
Liriano's been great for Pittsburgh this year.
Yep.
Vance Worley, who we signed 2 years ago and inexplicably just got rid of at the end of last year.
He was our opening day starter.
Opening day starter 2 years ago, and they just got rid of him. And it's not like he was like 30 years old either. He was like 24, 25 years old and got rid of him. Look what he's doing now in Pittsburgh. Absolutely. And I think we're seeing a disturbing pattern here of players who leave the team and then suddenly become stars elsewhere.
And there's one guy who does it. It's Ron Gardenhire. Guy's got to go. Guy's got to go.
This one tugs at the heartstrings a little bit. I love Ron Gardenhire. He's been here for years, and he's really become a true Minnesotan. Ron Gardenhire has. He snowmobiles. He ice fishes.
Don't start.
Don't go sour on the bit here. Don't step on my touchdown call. Let me get where I'm going. I'm just saying it's
okay.
Just to play devil's advocate, it's hard to get rid of him from that aspect, but. Let's look at the pure results on the field. This team has had now officially 4 90-game losing seasons in a row, 90-plus losses in a row. And unfortunately, I think Gardenhire is kind of a victim of this as well, because I don't think he's had that much to work with, quite honestly. Whether he could have made some changes with pitching coaches, I think he messed that up. That also reaches into the general manager's position.
You've got to blow up the clubhouse.
I agree. I think you look at having 4 90-loss seasons. Managers are not supposed to survive 4 consecutive 90-loss seasons.
Absolutely.
Managers rarely ever survive 2 90-loss seasons, let alone 4 consecutive.
Okay. They will rarely survive 1 90-loss season. I mean, if you even come close to 100, if you even come close,
Yeah.
you're out.
And
look at Ozzie Guillen. He had one bad year in Chicago, and he was gone.
Yeah, and speaking of Ozzie Guillen and blowing up the clubhouse, why don't we just throw the Molotov cocktail in the clubhouse right now? Blow it up.
Caveman stuff, but I mean it's
Molotov cocktail. Blow it up.
No.
Sign Ozzie Guillen. Bring him in to manage this team.
I don't like him quite so much. I think he's a good guy.
Well, you heard it on Barrero today or yesterday, and I agree completely with what was said. Is you need to bring in somebody who has had absolutely nothing to do with the way this team has been built and structured the last 4 years, and who could be farther from the Twins' lore of the past
Ron
4
Washington.
years than Ozzie Guillen? Okay, well, we don't want some guy coming in here snorting cocaine on strippers' asses and going crazy on the bit like Ron Washington apparently has been doing.
I like Ron Washington. I think he's
Well, he's a former Twin. He's got ties to the organization.
Oh, fine, whatever. All right, next one. Got very tangential on that one.
Yeah.
What's up with the Big Ten?
That was bad.
What's up with the Big Ten?
No, God!
Yeah. Big Ten's been
No,
bad.
God,
Big
please,
Ten's been
no!
very bad.
No!
It's-
No!
Yeah, they've. I mean, you look at the only bright spot in that entire league. It's been Michigan State, and they've already got one loss. Granted, that was to the Oregon Ducks, and I think Oregon is going to be one of the 4 playoff teams this year.
Yeah.
But
Michigan State could be too.
I think if there's any hope for the Big Ten, it's Michigan State.
Yeah. Maybe Wisconsin.
Minnesota is still Minnesota. They're not going to contend against actually ranked teams. You saw what happened against TCU,
Yeah.
who was not even ranked at the time. They got blown up by TCU.
Yep. And that comes down to being able to pass the ball, and the Gophers can't. They cannot run the ball. The other
they
thing,
can pass the ball. They can run the ball. They can't pass the ball.
That's my slip of the tongue there. But
I mean, you saw last week against San Diego State, Streveler threw the ball 7 times,
Yeah.
and he only had 1 completion out of 7.
yeah,
And with Max Williams out now, their number 1 target, I don't see how they're going to be able to compete in the Big Ten this year. You cannot compete when your offense is completely one-dimensional.
yeah. I
In the
agree.
Big Ten.
I
And,
agree.
and granted, last week they were able to run the ball with Cobb and with Streveler with great success. Cobb ran for over 200 yards, but we're talking about San Diego or San Jose State here. They're Mountain West. Okay, they're not Big Ten. This isn't Detroit, man. It's the Super Bowl. All right.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Now, I will say that I think Wisconsin could compete with Michigan State in the Big Ten. I think that those are going to be the 2 best teams. You look at Michigan.
If Wisconsin
Michigan
can
is,
prove to me that they can throw the ball more than they have, and not just rely on the running game, I agree. I think the defense is good enough.
You almost can't not rely on the running game in Wisconsin. You've got.
Well, no, I think the running game's always going to be the strong suit there in Wisconsin this year. But I think they need to be able to show me that they can throw the ball a little bit too,
Sure.
and not become pear-shaped on the passing game.
Yeah, no, I agree. No, I think that the big thing for Wisconsin, and we're going to find out very soon, is can they pass the ball like you said? 2, can they defend the pass?
Absolutely.
It's one thing to go against Bowling Green and try and defend the pass. It's a completely different thing to try and go against an Ohio State or a Michigan State or a Michigan or even a Nebraska and try and defend those kind of passing attacks.
You know, the one thing that is nice about these teams in the Big Ten, in terms of defending the pass, there's not a whole lot of teams that really sling it in the Big Ten. It's reminiscent of the old NFL North Division, the black and blue division. They run the ball.
It looks like the old Big Ten.
Yeah.
A lot of running the ball, a lot of 3 yards in a cloud of dust.
Yeah.
But you see the decline of these powerhouses like Michigan, Ohio State.
Michigan's having an abysmal year.
I know. Michigan, Ohio State, Nebraska, Iowa, even Wisconsin to some extent. No one has heard anything from Illinois, Indiana, Purdue, or Minnesota for decades. Northwestern is god-awful yet again. It begs the question, what happened to the Big Ten? Are they a Power 5 conference anymore?
I think they are, just because of just because of the money that they bring in. I think these teams. There's always going to be a couple teams from the Big Ten that can compete with the higher ranked teams in the rest of the country. This year it's Michigan. It's been Michigan State for the past few years. Michigan is usually good. They're terrible the past few years.
Well, Ohio State's usually good too.
Yeah, and Ohio State under Urban Meyer, they're usually good as well.
I mean, I'm a bit of a homer with that, but
Well, yeah, for some reason an Ohio State fan. But yeah, I think they're a Power 5 I mean, the Big Ten is always going to be a Power 5 conference. It's just what it is. It's like saying the NFL won't be relevant. It's not going to happen. But I think they're the weakest of the Power 5 right now, by far.
Yeah. I think that the ACC could make a strong case that they are also very weak. They've got maybe two power team again.
Well, they got the number one team in the country.
Yeah, they've got Florida State, but who else do they have? Clemson. Clemson's never consistent enough to be good. But look at the rest of that league. Wake Forest. I'm sorry. You can't convince me that they are not on the same level that the Big Ten is. I understand that they have Florida State, but Florida State almost lost to Clemson because they lost Jameis Winston. That's a weak team. They are built on sand.
I'd like to see in a few years here. I'd like to see North Dakota State make the jump into Division I.
I don't think they will. I don't think they ever will.
I don't know if they will or not, but I would like them to. I think you look at how they've been doing in FCS. They've dominated, and look what they do every year. They come up and they always play a BCS team, and what do? They kill them. They destroy them.
I want to see them play a power Big Ten, BCS team.
They played Iowa State this year in Iowa State. Iowa State paid that school $850,000 to come play them and come kick their ass at home in front of their own fans. And then the very next week, Iowa State goes and plays Iowa, and Iowa State beats Iowa. So therefore, you got to think that North Dakota State's better than Iowa. I think you put North Dakota State in the Big Ten right now. I think they're a middle of the pack team.
I want to see them play a team like Wisconsin. I want to see them play a Wisconsin. I want to see them play a Michigan. I want to see them play like a USC or a Notre Dame.
Well, and I think the unfortunate thing about it now is you're gonna. If the cat wasn't out of the bag on North Dakota State before this year, it is now.
Yeah. Let them come in. Let them be an independent with Notre Dame. Run around and play everybody.
I agree completely. But I think they're going to have to do that because they're not going to get a chance to play BCS teams anymore.
You would see a green and gold stampede across the NCAA.
I mean, look at the past 2 years. ESPN College Game Day has been in Fargo, and they've had great turnouts. I think the market is there. I think the team is there by far.
Yep.
And I think, obviously North Dakota State with a new coach. I want to see how he recruits. I want to see if he can, in the next couple of years, keep up that same level of domination.
Yeah,
that they had.
Absolutely.
But if they are able to, I would like to see North Dakota State bumped up to a Division I team. I'd like to see them become an independent and maybe hook on with a conference later on in later years.
Yeah, I think probably the best conference to fit in would either be a Mountain West or a Big Ten.
I would think. I think it would be Mountain West initially, and then I think you might see them, 5-10 years down the road.
You put them in the Mountain West. You've got teams like TCU in the Mountain West too. That immediately, in my mind, becomes one of the best conferences in college football. In my mind, obviously they're not going to be the SEC ever, because you don't have the recruiting power of the SEC or even like the Big 12 or the Pac-12. But because let's be honest, those are the three best conferences right now. The Pac-12, Big 12, and SEC are the top three. They are the absolute best year after year. They produce the best NFL talent. They produce the best talent, period.
Yeah.
Per capita, I don't know if you heard this stat, but per capita, Mississippi produces the most NFL talent out of any state in the union. Mississippi, per capita. Sure. And you know where all those kids want to go. They want to go to Bama. They want to go to LSU. Yep. They want to go to Texas. They want to go to A&M.
They want to go to Clemson, Auburn,
Florida State.
Yeah.
College football is so much bigger in the South. The NFL's territory is in the Midwest.
Yeah.
The Midwest and the East Coast, West Coast regions. That's where you get the biggest NFL turnouts. And that's why they'll never crack the South.
Yeah. You'll
never see an NFL team at Tuscaloosa. I mean, the only exception I can think of would be the New Orleans Saints. Yep. They're really the only ones that have cracked that code to be able to perform down there. That's because of Hurricane Katrina. They weren't popular before that.
And you look in even in Missouri with St. Louis. St. Louis has been rumored to be going back to LA for years and years and years now. They're not getting. And granted, the team sucks, so that doesn't help. but they're not getting the same attendance they were when there was the greatest show on turf with Marshall Fall.
And they didn't even have great attendance then.
Yeah.
I mean, it's comparatively to the rest of the NFL. If you looked at like a Chicago Bears game or Green Bay Packers game, you don't have the same turnout for a St. Louis Rams game, even back in 1999-2000, that you would in Green Bay in like 1987.
Yeah. And you look at a team like Atlanta. A couple weeks ago, they're kicking the crap out of Tampa Bay. It's an absolute show, a spectacle, an offensive spectacle.
But what does everybody want to talk about in Georgia?
They want to talk about Todd Gurley and the Bulldogs.
Nobody wants to talk about the Falcons. They want to talk about the Bulldogs.
I agree. The South is such the culture of high school to college football in the South is so much more deep. It's like hockey in Minnesota.
Right. Football will never be the sport here. It is hockey.
And that's not to say that in the South they don't like pro football. It's just that college is another level completely. Just like it's not to say people in Texas or New York or Massachusetts or
right, and we've
wherever don't like hockey, but it's to a completely different level.
There's credence to the saying that Minnesota is a small Canada. Yeah. There's such a love for hockey in the state because everybody has a pond in their backyard.
Yeah.
Hey, you have to go out to just like a small sporting goods store, buy a pair of skates, and you can learn.
Yep.
That's it.
And that's the same way it is in the South with football.
Exactly.
It's football weather year-round.
Now, next topic we got, obviously we're moving into hockey.
Oh, they're grinding some beans. Robbie's grinding up some beans there.
Oh, he's doing a great job. Look at that. We're going to break this down for you real quick.
He's placing both hands over the grinder.
He's got perfect form.
He's placing both hands over the grinder.
That's the best barista.
He's trying to deafen the noise so it doesn't pick up too much on the microphone.
He's a first ballot Hall of Fame barista.
First ballot. First ballot, or the entire world is upside down.
Absolutely. Now, moving on to hockey here. Wild season starts in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
Preseason's already started. I'm going to the game on Monday.
Wait, hold on.
I'm really excited, actually. I'm not usually a huge hockey guy, but I really started getting into it the last couple of years.
Wait. Let's rewind. The Wild season is what?
The Wild season's starting. Getting ready here. I'm so excited.
Yup.
So, how do you think they're going to do this year? How do you think they're going to stack up in that Central Division of the Western Conference? Arguably the best in hockey, by the way.
The Central Division, let's just get that out. Let's brush that off to the side right away. It is the best, the deepest division in hockey. It's not close. Look at what you got in the Central Division. You've got the defending Western Conference the defending Stanley Cup champions from 2 years ago, the Chicago Blackhawks. You've got a perennial powerhouse in the regular season, St. Louis. Granted, they haven't performed in the playoffs like you'd want them to, and I think Ken Hitchcock will be on a short leash this year because of that. But they're always a threat in the regular season. They're hard to beat at home. Grinding the ice. Rob's grinding the ice again.
Oh, there it is.
He's placing the hand over to deafen the sound.
That's perfect execution.
3, 1. Oh, he turns the blender off. There it is.
That's perfect execution.
Look at that perfect blend. He shakes it to loosen it. Dumps it right in.
By a well-trained serviceman behind the coffee counter.
That's what happens when you have an all-star behind the counter.
Absolutely. So
moving on again though to the Central Division. You got St. Louis, a regular season powerhouse. You got Colorado, who by the way won the division last year.
Yeah.
They have the most talented young players in the league on their team. They have Duchesne. They have Nathan McKinnon. They have Gabriel Landeskog. They have Semyon Varlamov. They have
and Varlamov was having a resurgence, by the way. He was not very good before Patrick Waugh got in there.
No, and I think what you saw in the playoffs last year was kind of an aberration. I think giving up 4 goals a game is not going to be Semyon Varlamov every season in the playoffs.
Right.
But I think you're looking at a Colorado team here who is a perennial playoff contender.
Yep.
Just based purely on the level of NHL talent they have that is below the age of 24.
Yep. I agree. I 100% agree.
They're gonna, as long as they keep that quote unquote keep the band together, they're gonna be playoff contenders for a decade.
Yep. I completely
agree. And again, all those guys are so young. The knock on them is, they're too young.
Yep.
They won the division last year.
Yep.
They're not too young. They're ready.
They're ready, but I don't think they're playoff ready. You're going to have to compete with the depth and the experience of a Chicago, of a St. Louis.
And again, obviously, you get into the playoffs, and the level of play has to reach another level that you didn't know you had before.
Right.
And Chicago, you saw that with them, with their young players, with Taves and with Kane. It took them a couple years to find that level.
Right.
And then once they reached it, they just blew everybody out of the water.
Yeah.
And I think you'll see that same thing with Colorado.
I agree. Who are your top 3 teams then this year? What do you think?
My top 3 teams overall, I've got Chicago number 1. I just think you look at the experience they have combined with the coaching, combined with the talent. I think they're going to be hard to beat all year long. And then once it gets to that playoffs, like we were talking about, that intangible of knowing what it takes to win in the playoffs and win big games on the road, when you're away from your building, when it's hostile, when you need to put it on the line, Chicago has that. They've been there, they've done that. I think they're perennially, until Taves and Kane retire, are going to be top playoff contenders.
Sure.
Then I go over and I look at Anaheim. I like what they've done this year, bringing in. They brought in the fucking all-star Danny Heatley.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll do much, quite honestly. But they brought in Kessler from Vancouver. He's going to be on that top line with Perry and with Getzlaf. Along with Heatley.
I will say with Heatley, he was the plus-minus leader for the Wild in the playoffs last year.
He was. I think. You saw a veteran guy step up his play to a whole nother level. How he'll do throughout an entire 82-game regular season, it remains to be seen. He's with a different team in Anaheim. I wouldn't expect him to reach 40, 50 goals again.
Right.
But I think he can be in that 10 to 20 goal range and be a supplemental guy.
Yep.
So he can help them a little bit, and in the playoffs, I think he can help them with just veteran leadership.
Yeah. They're going to need some more consistent goalie play in Anaheim, though.
That's what I was getting to. Their situation with the goalie play, you look at, they got John Gibson. He's the rookie. He played outstanding. They also have Frederik Andersen, who down the stretch last year gave Hiller and Gibson run for the money. They got 2 young goaltenders, both very young, actually. Both were rookies last year. I think you look at, for me, I think Gibson becomes the guy here.
Yeah.
I think he's got the consistency. Again, Frederik Andersen's kind of got the inside track here because he's got more of a sample size than John Gibson did last year. But you look at the games John Gibson played in, if he can keep up that consistency, he was dominating teams. And not scrub teams. He wasn't dominating the Calgary Flames. He was dominating top tier teams. He was dominating Chicago. He was dominating San Jose, who is one of the most high powered offenses in the league. He was shutting them down and making phenomenal saves and looking like a number 1 goalie at 21 years of age.
Right.
Now, again, he's young. I need to see the consistency before I am ready to say that he's going to be a number 1 for years and years.
Right.
But I think there's a little bit of a question mark there, you could say. I think they've got the talent and the coaching ability to put these guys in and kind of ride the hot hand between Andersen and Gibson, and I think they'll be just fine. For that reason, I have them as number 2.
Okay.
My third team, my top 3. I kind of went back and forth on this one. In the end, I decided to go with St. Louis. It's with them in the playoffs. It's hard to know how they're going to be.
Right.
Because they've just been so. And last year they were dealing with injuries, so I give them a little bit of a pass on that one. But since Hitchcock has been here, they've been, from regular season to playoffs, they've been completely different teams. They haven't gotten the goaltending in the playoffs that they wanted. They tried to fix it with Ryan Miller last year. That didn't work. I think they brought in Stastny this year as with their forwards. I think they've got some of the deepest forwards in the entire league.
They have the deepest.
And I think, without a doubt, that their defense is the best defensive core between all 6. The 6 guys on that defensive core in St. Louis, even the bottom pairing, those guys would be top 4 guys on any other team in the NHL. They got Shattenkirk.
While I agree, the defensive guys on St. Louis need to step up, especially around the blue line in the playoffs. They need to do that because they didn't. They haven't been. Right. They have to kind of accommodate this crappy goaling that they get in between the pipes in the playoffs and late in the season, that they hit the skids and then their defense has to sit back and play more conservatively. The times that St. Louis is best is when their goaltender's playing great and they can play aggressively. Because when St. Louis is playing aggressively, they are the best 5 guys on the ice in any team in any part of the league.
And you look at the way St. Louis likes to play. They like to play an attacking system. They like to pitch their defensemen in along the walls. They like to have their forwards play half wall to down below the net. They like to move the puck around a lot. They like to be aggressive in that offensive zone and take chances. And for me, that's where the problem comes in this year, is with their goaltending. Because when you're in the offensive zone and you're pinching your defensemen and you're taking chances, you're risking breakaways, you're risking 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s, odd man rushes, scoring opportunities for the other team.
Especially
and as good as their defensemen are skating, you're taking chances and you're relying on good goaltending, which they did not get at the end of last year.
And I don't care how fast your defenders are. You're not going to be able to stop a breakup from a guy like Nathan MacKinnon, who can blaze up the ice at any time he wants.
Nathan MacKinnon is the fastest player in the league, by far.
No doubt. And it's hard for me to believe that without good goaltending, without great goaltending, I don't think that the St. Louis Blues are going to be able to do a whole lot. Now, I think that if they can get consistent goaltending, they'll win the Stanley Cup.
I think you look at St. Louis, I think their defense is good enough to compensate for some poor goaltending, but they're good enough to compensate for mediocre goaltending. They're not good enough to compensate for bad goaltending, which is what they got in the playoffs last year with Ryan Miller. When Ryan Miller was playing stellar in the regular season after they picked him up from Buffalo at the trade deadline, St. Louis was unbeatable. Nobody touched them for like 3 weeks because Ryan Miller was stopping the puck.
Right, and I mean, you look at the teams that do really well. I mean, it's Chicago. Crawford is out of his mind when he's in goal.
Especially in the playoffs. I think in the regular season you see him make a few more gaffes. In the playoffs, for some reason, and he's taken a lot of criticism for this in the past years, but the past couple of years, especially when they won the Cup in 2012, I think you look at that team and you got to say that Crawford has absolutely gotten rid of those playoff woes. He's looked spectacular the last couple of years.
I mean, let's even look at the Stanley Cup Finals last year. The 2 guys in there with Lundqvist and Quick, they are, in my opinion, 2 of the top 3 goaltenders in the NHL, and that's why their teams are there.
Absolutely,
they have decent.
You have to in the playoffs. All bets are off. You have to have goaltending.
Yeah, it's like a quarterback in football. You have to have that position locked down because that's the last line of defense. It absolutely is. If you look at the Wild for just a second, that they have. Again, I think that if I'm going to go top 4, I think you go St. Louis, Chicago, Minnesota, Colorado, as far as depth in the forward positions. And I think that Minnesota could be a top 3 team in the NHL if they had consistent goaltending.
Yeah.
They have great defense, they have great offense, consistent offense, and the problem is they can't keep up with other teams scoring because Josh Harding is always hurt, Nicholas Backstrom's always hurt, Darcy Kemper is inconsistent because he's inexperienced, and if you bring in Ilya Bryzgalov, you run the risk of having the most inconsistent goaltender in the NHL.
Yeah, and I mean you look at the goaltending situation with Minnesota, and you got Nicholas Backstrom coming back this year. This is his first year in the last, I think, 2 or 3 years where he's been fully healthy coming into the season. He had surgery in the offseason to repair an abdominal issue and an ankle issue. I think now he's 36 years old. Okay, he's long in the tooth. He's not long for his career here.
Right.
But I think if you can get consistent play from him, it's going to be a goalie by committee type of thing. I don't think between Backstrom and Kemper you're going to see a real true number 1 step up and absolutely take the reins.
Right.
I think we're going to need both. We're going to need both of them to be playing well, and you're going to need to play the hot hand as much as you can if you're Mike Yeo. You look at since 2000, since the history of the league, really. When's the last time a team with mediocre, average to bad goaltending ever made it anywhere in the playoffs? It was 2006 with the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah.
When they had the goaltender by committee thing, and they lost to Carolina in the Stanley Cup Finals.
There's a dark horse team for you. Carolina could be decent this year.
With Jordan Staal going down now, you don't know how that's going to affect them. But yeah, I think with them they got goaltending issues too. But back to the Wild.
Yeah.
The Wild need Backstrom to be consistently good this year, and they need Kemper to take another step forward and be consistently good. They need the thing I worry about with Kemper is you saw so much good with him last year, but much in the way we were talking about Matt Khalil earlier with the Vikings, it seems like it's a head game with him where once he makes one mistake or he gives up one bad goal, it's like a snowball effect. And he's also been dealing with the concussions the past couple of years. He says it's in his past. We'll see how it goes. But absolutely, that's the biggest question mark right now. Minnesota's forwards, obviously signing Thomas Vanek in the offseason, bringing him in is huge.
Yeah.
He's a 30-goal scorer perennially.
It gives you all sorts of depth. It almost gives you a good problem to have at your lines.
You look at the top six. You've got your top line. You got Parisi, you've got Granlund, and Pominville.
Yep.
And then you've got, as they've been in training camp so far, Coyle and Vanek, centered by Koivu. That's your top six. That's one of the deepest top. That top six, I'll stack them up against any top six in the league.
Yeah.
Now, they might not win every matchup. I'm not saying we're going to score a billion goals this year.
Right.
But the depth that you play with is almost just as important as the level of talent you have.
Right.
Because usually teams will put their checking line, their third line, fourth line, or whatever, on your top guys and just focus on shutting them down if you don't have depth. But with the depth we have at forward, the top six, and even in the third line, you look at we got Nino Niederreiter, you've got Eric Haula, who had an absolutely fantastic playoffs last year, following a very strong end to the regular season. I think Haula is going to be even better this year, provided he stays healthy. And you got probably Matt Cook on that line, or possibly Justin Fontaine, depending on how it goes.
I think Fontaine's probably a better player than Cook. He could probably float anywhere.
I think Cook would be. I'm not going to say he'd be better on third or fourth line, but I think with Fontaine being in the lineup, you want to get him in a situation where he's going to be able to play more time in the offensive zone, which would be on the third line. And I think you'll see Cook more on the fourth line, some on the third line. But I agree. I think you'll see Fontaine, and I think you also see Zucker on that third line, provided they can both stay healthy. And I think that'll be kind of a flip-flop thing. So you've got Niederreiter and Haula with Fontaine and Zucker. Yeah. That's a speedy line, the third line. And that's guys who can flat shoot the puck and score.
Right. Now,
so you got
the big question for me comes up: can Scandella hold down the other side of the ice with Suter? That's going to be a major weak point if he can't.
I think we will see Suter playing with Brodin more often. You've seen that early on in training camp.
Sure.
I think those two have developed good chemistry with each other the past couple of years. Brodin needs to have a bounce back year. He had a great rookie season followed by a pretty average sophomore season last year. But you see that a lot. I don't think it's time to jump out and be too worried yet.
Right. But
that being said, I need to see him become more consistent again. It's his third year as a pro. He is only 21 years old, but he's been playing in the league for a while now. I think last year after the injury he had to his cheek, he got hit by a puck in the cheek, had the injury, had the facial surgery. I think that kind of derailed the season a little bit. I need to see him get back on track.
Right.
And I think playing with Suter will help because Suter is such a calming presence on the ice. I think that'll help the young kid.
You read somebody like Rousseau, and he seems to think anyway that Scandella is going to be the guy. And not saying that that's a bad thing, but Scandella is
going to be a major pivoting point on this defense. He's another young defenseman who needs to have a good year, and he's going to be playing with Spurgeon a lot. I want to see him be more. I liked how he looked at the end of the year physically in the defensive zone. I liked him getting his timing down, poking pucks away off guys' sticks. I liked him taking the body more because Scandella is a big-bodied guy.
Right.
I like to see him do that more often, be more physical. I'd like to see him be kind of like a Kevin Shattenkirk from St. Louis type of guy, where he's a big dude, he takes the body, and then in the offense, when he's got his opportunity, he takes that howitzer of a shot he has and lets it go from the point more often.
I agree. I think we've got a good set of scoring defensemen, but we need some guys that will play physically consistently.
And that's another big point. You look at Clayton Stoner leaving in the offseason. Clayton Stoner last year was really, as far as defense goes, he was the one big physical threat.
Yeah.
He was the one intimidating tough guy on the defense, and he's gone now. They signed Stu Bickle in the offseason to bring in a little bit of that physical play. I think he's going to be the seventh guy that Yo will throw in if we play a more physical team, like say St. Louis or Detroit or whoever it may be. We play a little bit more of a physical game. I think you'll see Stu Bickle thrown in there. But I think
Stu Bickle would make a good pairing, not a great pairing, but a good pairing for someone like Spurgeon.
The thing is, with Spurgeon's going to be a top 4 defenseman. He's at the point in his career where he needs to be a top 4 defenseman, and he is. I think you looked at the playoffs he had last year, and after that first game against Colorado, where he kind of gave the puck away and had the bad break for Colorado, scoring the goal. I think he really settled down. He had a great rest of his year, or a great rest of the playoffs, and I think looking at him, he's a top 4 defenseman. Yeah. So Stu Bickle is going to be a number 6 guy. He's going to be a number 7, a guy you healthy scratch unless you're playing a physical team.
Sure.
But I worry about that everyday on ice physical presence. Your 5 and 6 guys, you're going to have guys like Christian Folin, Matt Dumba, Stu Bickle will be there.
Dumba's another young guy who needs to step up. He's got potential, but he hasn't shown enough in my mind that he should be. I don't think that Dumba is the kind of guy that you need to bank your defense on within the next 3 years.
No, absolutely not. He's just a young kid. He's 20, 21 years old. He's played with Red Deer in the Western Hockey League for the past few years. He's been growing his game. By all accounts, he's looked really good in training camp. He's looked fast. He's looked skilled, which is what you like to see out of a defenseman like him. He's a lot like Green from Washington. He's a lot like him. Plays a similar style game, but a more physical style. He likes to throw the body around. He can really hit people. He's a great skater for a defenseman. He's got a great shot. He sees the offensive ice really well. But for him, I need to see him be more consistent in his defensive side of the game. I need to see him being confident, playing the body, moving guys off pucks.
Yep.
Obviously, he's not a huge kid, but you need to see him play physical. He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to. He's 6 foot nothing or 6'1" or whatever. He's not 6'3", 6'4". You don't need to see him absolutely banging guys in the backboards. But I need to see him taking the body.
We don't need a Zdeno Chara on the team. We don't.
No, I just need to see him being not afraid, not shying away from physical contact in the defensive zone.
I agree.
In terms of keeping guys away from the puck, taking the body in front of the net, that kind of thing.
So who do you got? Going to predictions here, just a quick prediction segment here. Winning the Central, who do you got?
Winning the Central, I got Chicago.
All right.
I think St. Louis is a close second, but I think the goaltending issues they have are going to hamper them a little bit, just enough for Chicago to get that bump, and I'll take them to finish first in the Central this year.
I'm going to agree with you, but I had St. Louis / Chicago. If St. Louis can't get consistent goal play, they won't win anything.
They might not even finish second. They might finish behind Minnesota and or Colorado.
Yeah, I agree. They'll definitely be in the playoffs, but I can't say for sure that they'll be.
I think you're going to see 4. I think you're going to see 4, maybe even 5 teams from the Central make the playoffs. You got the top 3 from both divisions automatically make it, and then you got your 2 wild cards.
Yeah.
I think you might see both wild cards come out of the Central Division.
I agree.
And none out of the Pacific. As good as that division is, I think the Central is just that good.
But I honestly, I think the top 3 in the Central is probably going to end up being in this order: Chicago, St. Louis, Minnesota. And I think that the gap is going to be wide between Chicago and St. Louis. I just don't see Chicago slowing down this year. Pacific, I've got Anaheim winning.
I also have Anaheim. Again, we went over the goaltending situation. I think they have enough talent to be able to make it through the season. Let the young kids grow well at the same time getting production. And I think their forwards are tremendous. They've always been a high-scoring team. And I think with Cam Fowler growing up and getting better on the defensive side, you're going to see them taking another step forward in the defense.
I agree. The only thing that I worry about is health. Can they stay healthy?
Yeah.
If they,
Getzoff and Perry are getting up there in age.
Right.
Kessler has been hurt in the past couple of years with Vancouver, and obviously Danny Heatley is Danny Heatley. But I think they also have enough young players there. You're going to see the emergence even more. I think they have Matthew Perreault is going to have a good year with them again.
Getzlaf, he's a stud when he's on the ice. He's absolutely phenomenal. like I said, with injuries,
he's one of the best. He's probably top. He's definitely top 5 center in the league.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Anaheim make a trade at some point in the early part of the season to get some younger guys in that forward position. Some guys who might have some consistency shooting the puck, but you never know. But I think that Los Angeles could make a good run for it. I don't think they'll get it. They'll probably end up finishing second.
Los Angeles to me is LA has never. The Kings have never been a team to me that has been really good in the regular season. They've always kind of, especially getting out of the gates in the early part of the season, they've always struggled for some reason.
Yeah.
They don't get their legs under them as fast. Towards the middle to late part of the season, they get it going. Yeah. You see them coming in. They come into the playoffs with a full head of steam, and that's what you saw last year again, winning the Stanley Cup.
Right, and I will say this too.
But I don't think they're a regular. I don't think they're. I'm just saying I don't think they're a regular season.
Yeah, I agree.
Top division team.
One team that I will want to watch closely is San Jose. They've been on the brink the last 3 or 4 years where they could be a really fantastic team, but they always seem to fall short. Something happens, guy gets hurt, something comes up.
Well, you look at San Jose last year. They had first round. They played the LA Kings. They had them on the ropes. They were up 3-0, and LA came back and beat them 4 games in a row.
They're the same problem that the Blues have. They don't have consistent goaltending.
Yeah, and I think San Jose is going to be number 2 in the division this year. I think they're a very sneaky good team.
Yeah.
Because I think that goaltending situation is going to be solved real fast this year.
You got LA at 3 then?
I've got San Jose at 2. I've got LA at 3. I think San Jose, looking at their goaltending situation, they've got the former UMD Bulldog Alex Stalock.
Okay.
Al Stalock is going to be the starting goalie this year. Nemi's up there in age. Stalock, you look at what he did coming in last year. He's matured in the AHL. He's matured playing some NHL games the past couple of years as a youngster. He's got the experience now. He's got the confidence. Alex Stalock is going to be the starting goalie in San Jose, and I think he's going to have great success. Now, how that translates to the playoffs yet, that remains to be seen, and that's always the big question mark in the playoffs is how your defense and your goaltending is going to play.
Definitely.
So we'll need to see that, but I think San Jose will be just fine this year with Stalock, and I think they'll finish 2 right behind Anaheim.
Sure. What do you got for the Metro?
Moving on to the Metro.
Not so sure about this one, I heard.
Well, the thing is, I wanted to take Pittsburgh just because it's the easy out, but I decided not to. I decided to go with, believe it or not, the Columbus Blue Jackets. The team everybody loves to clomp on throughout the year. They have finished last, I think, 4 of the last 5 or 6 years in the division. But you look at last year, you look at the step they took last year.
They were so good in the playoffs.
Yeah, and they have one of the best goaltenders in the league, perhaps the best. You look at the steps that Ryan Johansson took last year. He looks to me like a perennial all-star, Ryan Johansson.
Right.
He was, I believe, I don't know the exact pick, but he was definitely a top 5 pick from a couple of years ago. It's been a couple of years, but he's matured now. He took a huge step last year, and I would look to him to continue that this year. So I think Columbus, and I think they're going to surprise a lot of teams. I think they're going to come out of the gate strong. I think they brought in from Philadelphia. They brought in the skating tomato. What's his name? Scott Hartnell. They brought in the skating tomato, Scott Hartnell. I think with him, he's going to provide some veteran leadership. He's going to provide some power play presence, and he'll be someone that Johansson can play with. And I think you're going to look to him for a lot of leadership on that team because it is a very young team. But they can look to him for veteran leadership. I think they've got just enough veteran presence and a lot of young talent on that team. I think they're going to surprise people. And in a division where you perennially, consistently see Pittsburgh and New York shoot themselves in the foot.
Yep.
Pittsburgh has been bad for the past 3. Not bad, but they have not lived up to their expectations of having Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang on the same team. These guys should be absolutely decimating teams they play against, and it's just the opposite way around. Sometimes they're getting embarrassed, and they make the coaching change this year, and that's why I don't take them. If if we're just looking at the talent level of the teams in the division, Pittsburgh is the most talented team in that division by far.
Yeah.
But I look at the coaching change, I look at the steps that Columbus has taken, and I'm going to take them to surprise some people this year and win that division.
I'll agree with you on that point. I'll concede those points to you. I'm still going to take Pittsburgh. I think, like you said, it is the easy out, but I'm not an elite hockey mind here. But at the same time,
well, you're a casual hockey guy.
Exactly. I'm a very casual hockey guy, very new to the game. But at the same time, if they can get consistent goal scoring out of their top guys, you can't deny that Pittsburgh is one of the best in the league. They're absolutely top 5 if they can get consistent scoring. And a lot of that comes down to the health of Sidney Crosby. Can he stay on the ice the entire season?
Right. And also Evgeny Malkin, both of them have been hurt already in training camp. I mean, nothing too serious, but they have both been injured already. Their injury risks year in and year out, especially Crosby with his history of head injuries. They need to stay healthy if Pittsburgh's going to have a chance.
Yeah.
Because they don't have much depth below those two. Obviously, they have Bennett. He's a good youngster coming through. But in addition to all this, I need to see Fleury play a consistent 82-game schedule and not completely screw up Pittsburgh's chances to do damage in the playoffs. And I need to see what the new coaching looks like, because I think, quite honestly, I think Pittsburgh pulled the trigger on Biles, but too quick. I think Biles never got a real chance after 2009 because there was so much turnover on that team. The expectation to win with Shiro bringing in so much new talent and shipping out so much new talent. The turnover on that team and combined with the injuries and all the drama surrounding them.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that's gonna affect them. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how, maybe he could be the best thing for him and he could be the remedy.
Yeah.
But he might not be, and it might take a year to kind of gel with this new system. Obviously, a new coach means a new system. It means new power play schematics. And they've had the whole offseason to scheme around that and plan it and kind of look at stuff, but I need to see the consistency before I'm willing to take that chance on picking them to win the division. And even you looked at even when they did have steady coaching and had steady play from Crosby and from Malkin, they were still losing games. And I need to see, they're just not a very good defensive team. I mean, they have Paul Martin and Brooks Orpik, and then the rest of them are just, scrubs, basically.
I agree.
I need to see consistent goaltending, consistent defense from them before I'm willing to say that they're going to win the division every year, and let alone make the playoffs and do any damage.
Right. Last one. I mean, this one's pretty easy. I think we can both agree on this. Don't need to break it down at all. Both got Boston winning the Atlantic. There's no competition there.
Boston's going to run away with that again. They got great goaltending, strong defense all the time. They've got some of the deepest forwards in the league. Their forwards are top 3 in depth. I mean, they got Bergeron. They just brought back David Krejci on a 5-year deal.
Yep.
They lose again, Love, but I think they'll be able to recover from that. I think they'll be all right.
Moving on, last couple here on hockey. Real quick, winner of the Western Conference, go.
I think Minnesota makes playoffs, and I think we make a run this year. I think we get to the Western Conference Finals, and I think for a third consecutive year, Chicago knocks us out of the playoffs. I know it's bad news.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's gonna be a good year for the Wild this year. I think this is the last ramp up year we have before we really are gonna make a run at the Cup next year. Our guys will have enough experience, I think, where they're gonna be able to do some real damage. So you've got Chicago in. I've got Chicago in the Western Conference. My conference champion, I've got Boston in the East. I think, again, there's just not a whole lot of consistency out of anybody else in the East to really give it to anybody other than Boston at this point.
Wait a minute. You're picking Boston?
I am picking Boston. What's the problem?
You coward! You pathetic coward!
Why am I a coward for that?
You got to go out on a limb more than that.
Fine. Okay. Fine.
No, I'm kidding. I had Boston too. I've got Boston winning it all. Actually, I just think you look at the overall team with provided they stay healthy.
Yeah.
They've got the deepest team at forward. They've got some of the best defensemen in the league, and they've got one of the top 3 goalies in the league in Tuukka Rask. When he's on his game, he's unbeatable.
Yep.
And I think you look at the whole package throughout the league, you look at the teams as a whole, Boston's got the best setup. They've got consistency in coaching. They've got consistency in their players. They have a specific way that they play, and they've had it for years. There's nothing new with them. They're not going through a tumultuous coaching change. They're not losing a bunch of guys.
Yeah.
I think you look at them, they're going to be the most consistent team throughout the year, and I think that consistency is going to roll through to the playoffs.
I agree. I had I've got Vancouver over Toronto. I'm just kidding.
You're not seeing the game clearly if you've got Vancouver and Toronto.
We've got Chicago over Boston in 6. I think that's the way it'll come down. I think Chicago is just too powerful offensively to stop. And when Crawford's on his game in the playoffs, again, unbeatable. And I think their defense is just a little bit more consistent than Boston's.
Yeah,
it'll be a low-scoring 6.
I'll take Boston over Chicago in 7. Chicago's a good enough team to stretch it to 7 games. But I think Boston finishes it off Game 7 at home.
Let's move to our last thing here.
Absolutely.
We're running a little short on time there, so let me pull it up here.
We've only been at it for 2 hours here.
Hey, having fun.
We could go more. We could go 3 if the game wasn't on.
We could go 3 if the game wasn't on. We got to.
And if this place wasn't closing. Unfortunately, Rob has to go home at some point tonight. He doesn't want to stay here until 10 p.m. with us.
Yeah, breaking down. Now we're going to be breaking down Week 4 of the NFL season tonight. I haven't seen the score yet. I don't know what's going on. We got the Giants and the Redskins. Who you got in that game?
Well, I think it's good that we haven't seen the score. This will be organic. No cheating involved here. We really have not seen the score. We're not lying here. I'm taking the Redskins because I think Kirk Cousins is going to breathe some life into that offense, and I think Eli Manning he's coming around a little bit. You saw him come around last week, but he's just bad enough to shoot New York in the foot another time.
I'm going to go the opposite way, and I'm going to take the Giants in this one. Only because I think that their secondary is a heck of a lot better than Philadelphia's secondary. That's part of the reason I didn't start Cousins tonight. That I've got Tony Romo going against the Saints this week, literally only for the reason that I think that the Giants are going to be able to shut down that Redskins passing attack. Next game we got Bills versus Texans. What do you got in that one?
I like the Bills. I like the start they've gotten out to this year.
I agree.
I think their team playing with a lot of confidence. Texans, I just don't. I'm still iffy on the whole Fitzpatrick thing and the offense.
Without Arian Foster, it's tough to tell.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll see. I don't think they're going to be as bad as they were last year, which would be hard to do anyway.
True.
But I think they'll take a step forward this year. But I think the Bills have got this game.
Yeah. Next one I got is Panthers-Ravens. I'm taking the Panthers. Their defense steps back up. I think they get a couple of turnovers off of Joe Flacco. In his last 13 games, Joe Flacco has thrown an interception every single game. Usually he throws 2. He's thrown a pick 6 in 6 out of the last 13. I like the Panthers.
Yeah, I'll take the Panthers in this one too. I think you're going to see a Panthers team, especially the defense, they're going to bounce back. They're going to be angry after getting handled by Pittsburgh last week, at home nonetheless.
I know.
That's going to be a defense that had all week to think about that. All week it was on national television. Let's not forget, they were embarrassed on national television by the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're going to be an ornery bunch coming out.
Yep.
And I think they're going to run away with this game, quite frankly.
Yep. I've got, in the next one, I've got Packers-Bears. I'm going to take the Bears in this one. I think that Jay Cutler is going to go hog wild with that abysmal Packers defense. I don't think it's even going to be close. Aaron Rodgers will be doing a lot of that. He's going to get used to seeing Jared Allen's number in blue and orange this coming Sunday. It's not even going to be close. Chicago runs away with
this
it.
This is a live recording of Aaron Rodgers' voice while he's facing the Bears defense this weekend.
Here it comes.
Yeah, I'm taking the Bears as well. The Packers' offensive line is going to get handled, I think.
Yeah.
I think Chicago's secondary is good enough to cover up Nelson and Cobb just enough. But I think we're Chicago's really going to win the games on offense.
Yep.
Green Bay's defense, excluding the week last week against Detroit.
Yeah, Matt Stafford made a couple of bad throws. Jay Cutler doesn't make those throws.
Yeah. Well, this year he hasn't.
That's true. He's having a career year. I said it before. I'll say it again. He's a top 3 quarterback this season. I think he's going to be great. Next game, we got the Lions and the Jets. I'm taking the Lions in a blowout. I think Calvin Johnson goes wild. Matt Stafford goes wild. We're going to see the biggest game of the year by both of those guys, and it won't be close.
Yeah, you've got Detroit playing a pass-happy Detroit team playing a Jets team who's giving up the 3rd most fantasy points to quarterbacks in the passing leagues.
Yep, and the 6th most to receivers.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic. The Jets' run defense is the best in the league. Their passing defense is one of the worst in the league. They can't get a pass rush even though they can stop the run.
Well, it's easy with big guys like they have.
They've got big guys in the middle is what I was going to say. They've got big guys in the middle who can stop the run, but they don't have any speed rushers off the edge. So I think, and then the secondary is complete garbage, quite frankly. After they lost Revis, it was pretty much over with there.
Yep.
I like Detroit to beat up on the Jets team. I think you saw last week, Chicago had a pretty good day against them.
Pretty good. They torched them.
Yeah,
all day.
Yeah, you look. It was like watching the Vikings defense last year. They're just wide open receivers all around the field.
Then I've got Titans at the Colts. I think I'm going to take the Colts in a blowout again. Andy Luck's just too good to pass up. I can't even think of any reason that Tennessee's going to win this game, other than the fact that maybe they get a little bit of pressure on Andrew Luck, but it won't. Again, I hate to say it 3 times in a row, but it's not going to be close.
Yeah,
it's just not good enough in Tennessee. You know, it's just.
Amen, brother.
Yeah, I agree. I'm taking Indy all the way there.
Yeah.
Tennessee, the defense is almost non-existent, and I think despite Jake Locker having a pretty decent start to the year, despite Bishop Sankey kind of garnering some attention at the running back spot.
Yeah.
I think Indy's defense is good enough to kind of slow them down.
Yep.
I think Andrew Luck has a big day against the Tennessee defense.
I agree. Next, we've got the Dolphins and the Raiders. Do you want to break this one down? This one's a shit show.
No, wait, hold on. Hold on.
This game is going to be so bad.
I'm sorry. Who are the 2 teams again?
It's going to be Miami and it's going to be Oakland. I think it's in Oakland.
Miami and Oakland.
Miami and Oakland. It's, like I said, a shit show. Absolutely awful.
Yeah, those 2 teams are hard to watch. I'm taking the lesser of 2 evils, and I'm taking the Dolphins to beat a terrible Oakland team.
Next game, we've got Steelers-Bucks. Again, absolute shit show. Bucks getting blown out last week.
The Bucks might be the worst team we've seen in the NFL in the past decade.
Jacksonville? We'll get to that one next, but
How would you like to see a game between Tampa Bay and Jacksonville?
I would rather shoot myself.
Do you think there would be 200 combined points?
Well, if there were 200 combined points, it's the only points that would be scored in that game is by everybody who didn't watch it. That would be literally the worst game that I think I'd ever seen. I literally can think of no game worse that I'd want to watch. Maybe if someone like the 2007 New England Patriots played this year's Jacksonville Jaguars. That's literally the worst thing I can think of. And it's not even something that happened. I just want so badly for this game to be over. I don't want to think about it anymore.
Do you think that if Tampa Bay and Jacksonville got together, do you think Blaine Gabbert would throw for 500 yards?
Blaine Gabbert plays for the San Francisco 49ers now.
I'm sorry, not Blaine Gabbert. The Blake Bortles.
I hope he's not a bust. I liked him a lot in college. I think he's a good quarterback. Reminds me a lot of Roethlisberger. Next team we got.
The hell is this, a joke?
Well, no, we didn't take a pick. I'm taking the Steelers. No, I'm taking the Bucks in this game.
You're taking the Bucks against the Steelers.
Taking the Bucks against the Steelers.
I'm going to take I think the Steelers are favorited by like 13.5 points in the Vegas spreads this week. I will take the Steelers to win and cover.
All right. Next game we got Jags-Chargers. Chargers, no doubt. If you've got Chargers players on your bench, you start them, you pick everybody up.
Well, I'll tell you what I did. I'll tell you what I did this weekend.
You didn't pick up Donald Brown. I know that. I did.
Well, I tried to pick up Donald Brown.
Funny.
You know what I think of Donald Brown? Screw
It's-
Donald Brown.
Why would you screw Donald Brown?
You know who I did pick up? I picked up San Diego's defense against
that'll be
the abysmal team. Yeah, let's just move on. I'll take San Diego
I'll
up.
take San Diego to blow out. Save that one for later. 49ers, Eagles. What do you got? I'm taking Philly. No doubt.
I'm taking Philadelphia in a shootout.
Yep. Saints, Cowboys. I will take the Cowboys in a shootout.
Saints Cowboys. Where is it at? It's in Dallas, isn't it?
I believe it is in Dallas. Yes.
Yeah, I like the way DeMarco Murray's been playing,
Especially against that abysmal Saints defense.
The Saints are horrible on the road. I'll take Dallas.
Yep. Pats, Chiefs.
I'll take the Chiefs. I'll take the Chiefs for the upset.
I'll take the Pats just because Rob Gronkowski's going to go hog wild. And then Falcons, Vikings, we'll break that one down last just because it's our favorite team. But
Yeah, you can go ahead. What's your take on that one?
The thing with this is the Falcons are up and down. 1 week they scored an engorging amount of points. It made my fantasy boner hard thinking about Matt Ryan. But the next week they come out and they have it just laying
Compelling and rich.
He was compelling and rich. And then this past week they come out and they absolutely torched the Bucs.
Yeah.
I don't know what to think about the Falcons. I do know this. Teddy Bridgewater is going to absolutely change everything for the Minnesota Vikings. He's going to make that team a different team. And we've known it since we drafted him. He's a guy who can change the game. He's going to change the way the game is played because he's not a running quarterback, but everybody seems to think that he is. Do you know why? Because he's black.
Come on.
I don't mean that to be a racist thing, but you look at these quarterbacks, and what's the one thing that everybody says about black quarterbacks? They're runners. They're athletic. Mike Vick, RG3. Teddy Bridgewater's not that way. He's a pocket passer. He reminds me a lot of Warren Moon, believe it or not. You ever watch him play?
Black?
No. He reminds me a lot of Warren Moon because Warren Moon had the same stigma that everybody thought he was this over-athletic quarterback.
That was as a joke.
No, I'm sorry. I don't mean to step on your touchdown call. I'm not trying to clomp on the bid. Go ahead.
I get it. And I know you think it's ridiculous, but he reminds me of Warren Moon because everybody said the same thing about Warren Moon. Because the only other black quarterback who had success was Doug Campbell, and it was in one game, and that was the Super Bowl. That's it. And there is a certain stigma around black quarterbacks, and I don't mean to make this into a racist thing, but that they're all athletic and they need to all fit the same mold, and they don't. Teddy Bridgewater is not that kind of player. If I were to compare him to any like a Hall of Famer, he reminds me more of a Steve Young or what's the guy's name? I said it earlier. Not San Francisco. It's Dallas Cowboys. Staubach. Reminds me more of Staubach than anything. It's just he's mobile in the pocket. He can throw on the run. He fakes the run well. And he's got so many weapons there. Cordero Patterson. He's got good tight ends. He's got Greg Jennings.
Yeah, I'm still. We had the conversation about the whole Randy Moss compared to Cordero Patterson thing.
Randy Moss is a great player.
And he is. And I'm not sitting here suggesting that Randy Moss is going to be, that Cordero Patterson is going to be Randy Moss. I'm not saying that. I won't say that. I refuse to say that. But I think Cordero Patterson can do more than Randy Moss could. I think he's a more physically talented receiver than Randy Moss was. And I think that with some coaching, he could be a more polished receiver than Randy Moss was. Yeah. He has a lot of quit now. Imagine him.
He also has a better attitude, just generally about himself.
He's a team first guy.
Yeah.
And that's why I like Cordero Patterson. Coming out of Tennessee, you learn that it's more about the team than it is about you. Yeah. It's not an Alabama. Tennessee is a team-driven team. And I love Cordell Patterson for that. But we're talking about Teddy Bridgewater. And I think Teddy Bridgewater is the difference in this game. I think that he's going to torch that Atlanta defense, who, despite what they did against Tampa Bay, they're a terrible defense.
I think nobody will ever admit this, but I think with Matt Castle being hurt, I think that locker room kind of breathes a sigh of relief. They're gonna get a little Teddy Bridgewater now, like Castle, like hey,
We don't need it.
they don't need Castle. We don't want Castle.
I like Matt Castle. Matt Castle's a nice guy, but
he's a serviceable backup.
Here's the thing: Christian Ponder is a serviceable backup.
Christian Ponder is a serviceable backup to that guy.
Christian Ponder, he got the short end of the stick. Matt Castle's getting the short end of the stick. It comes down to system. Neither of them fit in this system.
Let's not go on a tangential feel bad here for Castle and Ponder. They've had their chances. It's not like they weren't given an opportunity.
I do feel bad for Ponder. You put him behind a terrible offensive line in a terrible team with no weapons, and he was able to.
Hold on.
All this negativity that's in this town.
It did suck. It was awful. It was a terrible team, but it wasn't Christian Ponder's fault. I don't blame Christian Ponder for the way the Vikings performed 2 years ago, just like I don't blame Matt Castle or the defense for what happened against New England.
You don't blame him for throwing 3 picks.
No.
Green Bay.
No, I don't. You look at those interceptions. You go back and look at those, and you tell me how many of those he was under pressure. How many times he was running for his damn life trying to escape the pressure. And I guarantee you, 3 times out of 3 on all 3 of those plays, Christian Ponder was running for his life when he threw a pick. He might not have been running, but
Is wearing women's underwear part of your turn-on?
I don't know. I feel bad for Christian Ponder. And that's the last I'll say of it. I'm not talking about Christian Ponder anymore. He makes me feel bad.
Thank God.
It's done.
Spare me Christian Ponder stuff.
We don't need
The last thing that I wanted to do here, just because that was kind of our last bit. Thursday night next week, we got the Vikings and the Packers. I don't think we're going to get a chance to break that one down beforehand, so let's break it down now.
Well, hold on. We gotta at least make our picks here with the Atlanta Vikings game. I want to hear the pick, the actual pick. What's your pick? Are you taking the Vikes at home? Are you going to be a Rube?
I am taking the Vikings at home.
He's Rube cred
to beat the Atlanta Falcons.
Rube cred
happen. And I'll tell you what, it's going to be a close game. Think like 28-24, Minnesota over Atlanta.
Here's the deal. I want the Vikings to win. I'm a Rube. I'm a Vikings fan at heart. I have been. 98 broke my heart too. 2009 broke my heart with Favre throwing it right to Tracy Porter.
Again, not his fault. It was the offensive line running for his life again.
Okay, yeah, we get it. That being said, I gotta bet with my head here, not with my heart. I'm taking Atlanta to beat the Vikings this week.
You've got to be joking me, right?
You know,
it's a winnable game. The Vikings can totally win this game.
It is a winnable game, but how often do you see the Vikings win winnable games?
All the time. Was New Orleans really winnable in the Superdome?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, we had them. New Orleans was not playing well. We held Drew Brees to 2 touchdowns.
We did hold Drew Brees to 2 touchdowns, but you know why we lost that game? We were in the Superdome with a rookie quarterback for 2 out of the 3 drives that we were in the red zone.
We lost that game because the offense couldn't score a touchdown in the red zone with Castle or Bridgewater. When you're in the red zone 3 times and you kick 3 field goals, you're not going to win many games. You're not going to win many games.
You need to get the ball in the hand of Cordero Patterson. I don't care who you are. The guy is a monster with the ball in his hand.
Yeah, he's.
You got to let the guy play.
He's one of the best wide receivers or just players in the game in general when he has the ball in space.
Yep. No, I agree. Now, next week,
God forbid he ever got hurt.
Yeah, that would be bad. Vikings Packers next week. The Packers are so god awful this year. They're so bad. No, I'm not going to make it.
We're playing at Green Bay, correct? Yeah, we're at Green Bay
Yeah.
for the first game.
Now, that's going to make things a little bit different, but you know what? I like playing there earlier in the year rather than when it's cold.
Yeah.
You know, with a team that's going to pass the ball like the Vikings are now, because we don't have a solid running game anymore. I mean, you could make a case that the Vikings could win that game against a bad Packers team.
Nope.
You don't think the Vikings are going to beat the Packers?
No, I don't. I think the Packers win that game
Easily, or do you think it's going to be close?
I think it's usually always a close game between the Packers and Vikings, no matter how good or bad the team is that year. The two teams are. I just think you look at overall. It seems like year to year, there's never really any blowouts when it comes between Vikings Packers. Same way it is with Packers Vikings Bears. Bears Packers. All these division games always seem like they end up pretty close.
Yeah.
You look at last year, we lost to the Packers by less than a score, and then we tied them once. And we were abysmal last year. Our defense was horrible, and we still found a way to make those games close to them. I think you throw out all bets are off when you play a division game against an old rival. That being said, I don't trust our defense enough right now with the injuries on offense and defense. Overall, I don't like the Vikings to win in Green Bay. Now, if we're at home, it might be a different story. I like us better at home right now. I think we have, granted, our only wins on the road, but I think you'll start to see a little bit more swagger coming in with the home. I think with the crowd behind us.
I throw week 2 out the window, and I'll tell you why. The Adrian Peterson thing broke 2 days before.
Yeah.
You lose your best player the day before a game. You don't know what's going to happen with him in the future. You get the 3-time Super Bowl champion New England Patriots coming into town. Granted, they're not as good as they used to be, but they're still the New England Patriots. Yeah. I thought about that after the game, that if I was a young player on that team, and we are a young team, the Vikings are a very young team. It's part of building through the draft as you stay young.
Yeah.
If I was a young player going into that game thinking, we don't have Adrian Peterson, our only weapon is Cordero Patterson, our quarterback is a backup at best, and we are playing the New England Patriots.
Yeah. Well, I think more than that. I don't think they really thought necessarily in that respect as much as much it was just. I think for me it was more of just the distraction of having all the media things going on.
Right.
I think just the overall pressure surrounding the team being in the news and having multiple media interview you, asking you the same questions over and over. I think it just takes away from the focus of preparing for the week.
And you think about those guys who would be distracted by something like that, and I think of how did I react when I heard the Adrian Peterson thing? For 4 days, from Friday to Tuesday, I was literally glazed over. Yeah. I was sad. I was depressed. I was angry at something. I don't know. I wanted to defend him, but I couldn't. There was no defense for what he did, but at the same time, it was the entire state, and I would be shocked if the team wasn't the same way. The entire state went into a state of mourning because it felt hopeless. We had so much hope going into this year.
Disappointed!
Exactly. Disappointment, anger, sadness, regret for putting so much faith in a person like that. We called this man Purple Jesus.
Yeah.
Do
you think, and without going too far into it because we're becoming tangential again, we'll kind of get back to the point, but just to ask the question because I'm curious as to what you think. Do you think that he knew what he was doing?
Yeah.
Or do you think that he more was just trying to do what he was taught, not necessarily taught how to raise his kids, but basically taught by experience of how he was raised, how kids are raised in the South? Or do you think that he knew he was basically beating his son and yet he continued with it?
I will tell you that I believe that parents have the right to discipline their children. I do. My dad didn't lay a hand on me, and I love him for it. I won't lay a hand on my kids because that's not who I am. But at the same time, there's got to be a limit to what we do.
Good for you!
There's got to be an understanding that we as a society need to move past that.
Yeah.
It is child abuse. It absolutely is. It was a monstrosity.
It's over, Johnny.
It's a monstrosity what happened to Adrian Peterson's son. But at the same time,
you can't look at those pictures and not be disturbed by them.
Right. At the same time, you can't tell me that a guy like Adrian Peterson did that with malice in his heart.
Yeah.
He's not a guy who I think that
He seems like a nice guy.
I don't think that Adrian Peterson is the kind of person that does things maliciously. Frankly,
besides when he's running over linebackers and cornerbacks and safeties.
Frankly, he's too dumb. And I'm not afraid to say that. Adrian Peterson is a meathead. He's an idiot. That's okay. That's why we love him. But people were
How neat is that?
They were reasonably disgusted with him. And I was reasonably disgusted with him. And I tried to justify that with my love for him as a football player. But
Amen, brother!
it's so hard to do that. It's so hard to move past that. And I do think he'll be back in the NFL. I do. I think he'll be playing again next year. I think when this is all said and done, he's going to be found not guilty in Texas. He's going to move on with his life. And I think he's done with the Minnesota Vikings. I don't think he'll be back.
I think regardless of what happens in the criminal case, he's looking at a lengthy suspension from the NFL.
I don't know
without pay.
I don't know that he would be. And I'll tell you why. I think the fact that he's going to be out of the public sight for a good year and a half, I don't see them suspending him. I don't. I think that they will use time served as an excuse to bring him back. I do think he's going to Dallas. I don't think that that's a mistake. And I'll tell you why. If he can become the face of the movement to stop corporal punishment in the home to the level that he did it in the South, you'd completely change the culture down there.
Yeah.
You could put him in Texas and have him be that guy and have him be the face of that and change things down there. I think that would be the best PR move the NFL ever made, is reinstating him and moving him to Dallas.
Oh, I think he would fit in Texas well. I think he'd fit better in Houston with the troubles they've had with Arian Foster and his health. I think DeMarco Murray is kind of the man there right now. Not to say they couldn't split carries between the two, and I mean, what a tandem would that be? That being said, I think he could fit well in Houston too. I think either or, but I think if he's not with the Vikings next year, which he might be, he might not be. It's just too early right now to tell.
Yeah.
I think I agree. He would be with the Texas team.
Yeah, it's. I struggle to say what team he would end up with. It's tough for me to think about the fact that Adrian Peterson won't be in purple.
Yeah,
I want him to retire.
I think we should. This is something to revisit in later weeks when you start to see a clearer picture of how this is going to shape up in the future. Yeah. I think right now it's just too fresh. It's too early. It's been kind of pushed to the side right now. It's just he's on the exempt list. He's gonna make his money anyway.
Yeah.
But we just don't want to deal with it right now. He's not gonna play. He doesn't deserve to play right now.
Yep.
But at the same time, we're not going to talk about it every day and deal with it every day. Yeah. It just needs to be. It needs to sit for a little while.
I agree, and I think that that it's going to be tough for Adrian Peterson to come back with the public vitriol, but it's going to be better for him to move on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we'll cut it short for there today.
Yeah. With that being said, we're gonna stop there.
Yeah. 2 hours and 32 minutes so far.
Yeah.
It's good for a start.
I think we'll be back next week. We'll try and do this again. For now, we're gonna leave. Yeah. But we'll see you guys again next week. Thanks for listening to the whole thing. Skol Vikes. Good luck in week 4 of fantasy football. Yep. And we'll see you next week. Bye bye.